Chapter 558. Squeak, squeak, squeak. The cicadas seemed to be venting their anger at this summer night. Too hot. Too hot. Jiangcheng was located in the south of the Yangtze River. The humidity was relatively high, and the summer was particularly hot. It was the same at night. Even if the heat dissipated a little, the house was still stuffy and suffocating. Unless the air conditioner was turned on, it was difficult to stay in the house. Yang Yi was enjoying the cool air outside. At this time, he was alone on the balcony on the second floor, sitting comfortably on the recliner. He peeled an orange and ate it while glancing at the computer on the side to watch a video. A calm heart naturally cooled down. His ears blocked the sound of the cicadas, and he could feel the cool breeze from the mountains. Although it was very light, it soothed the anxiety caused by the heat in his heart. The only drawback was the harassment of mosquitoes. Yang Yi sprinkled some toilet water on himself to avoid their harassment. The video on the computer was Criminal Thoughts, directed by Paul Tenier. Murphy said that the plot was a little scary and not suitable for children, so she pushed Yang Yi upstairs to the study to let him watch it himself. Yang Yi didn't want to turn on the air conditioner in the study, so he moved to the balcony to enjoy the night breeze and watch it with relish. But at this time Murphy suddenly exclaimed downstairs, "Honey, come down and watch." Yang Yi, who was watching the dangerous crime scene, was stunned for a moment. He hurriedly opened the screen door and entered the house, thinking that something big had happened downstairs. Yang Yi had just walked quickly to the stairs when he looked down and saw Xishi's small head. The little girl was giggling and climbing up with Bao Bao. Perhaps it was the advantage of the breed, but Steamed Bun grew very quickly. He was only half a year old, but he was now taller than Little Gray, the largest of the three British Shorthairs. His slender and powerful legs also allowed him to easily navigate tall obstacles such as stairs or sofas. However, Bao Bao was not very brave. In the face of the three kittens, he still chose to be timid unconditionally. Sometimes, the naughty Xiao Guai stretched out his paw to pat Bao Bao's head. Bao Bao just raised his eyes and looked at Xiao Guai as if he was wronged. He didn't have any thoughts of fighting back. "Daddy, Daddy." When Xishi saw her father, she couldn't wait to tell him, "Mom's stomach is moving. Mom said that there's a baby inside." Then, seeing her in such high spirits, Yang Yi's hanging heart could finally be put down. So it was fetal movement. Yang Yi chuckled. He bent down and picked up his daughter, who was still talking, and let her sit on his arm. Let's go take a look." Actually, a 5-year-old girl was already a little heavy. Moreover, Xishi was taller, almost as tall as a 6- or 7-year-old child. But in her father's arms, the little girl still sat steadily. Her father's strong arms gave her the most secure support. Steamed Bun happily ran in front, but when he turned around, he saw that Big Master had carried his little master down again. However, it had not had enough fun yet. This little exercise was nothing in front of the little yellow dog. After looking at it suspiciously for a while, and confirming that the little master didn't continue to play with it, Steamed Bun whimpered and ran down while wagging its tail. This guy had a very high IQ. When it first came to the house, it urinated and defecated everywhere. Later, Yang Yi took its poop to the bathroom on the first floor, and pulled it over to smell it. After teaching it twice, Steamed Bun stopped defecating everywhere. This made Yang Yi unable to implement the reward education method that he had prepared. Later, it even learned how to flush the toilet. After using the toilet, it stepped on the toilet pedal and watched its poop being flushed away. Only then did it run out happily. There was also that time when Steamed Bun killed Shishi's little fish. Although Yang Yi forgot to punish it, the little guy still knew that it had done something wrong. It was listless for a few days and didn't bite anything in the house. It was like an obedient baby. Now Steamed Bun was the same. It only whimpered a little, and didn't shout loudly to call its little master back. It knew that its big master didn't like it being noisy. Compared to the other three mischievous British Shorthairs, Steamed Bun was really too obedient, and was doted on by its masters. Xiao Guai and the others, meow? Doting? I don't care. Playing with you is because I think highly of you. Yang Yi came down with Xishi in his arms. He saw Murphy leaning on the sofa and watching TV. Murphy's pretty face was a little rounder because of her pregnancy. Her eyebrows were relaxed, Her eyes were smiling, and her hand was gently touching her belly. When Murphy saw Yang Yi, she hurriedly waved and said happily, "Honey, come over quickly. Xiaobao was kicking me just now. I don't know if it will kick again later." Because Shishi was already a baby, Murphy and Yang Yi hadn't decided on a name for the new baby, so they simply called it Xiaobao. Murphy had also felt Xiaobao's fetal movement before, but it wasn't very big at that time, just like a butterfly flapping its wings. It was only recently that it gradually became bigger. Yang Yi hadn't been able to see it yet. Xiaobao seemed to be very naughty. It moved a little, but every time he ran over, it stopped moving. This made Yang Yi's heart itch unbearably. Shishi was put down by her father. She happily supported herself on the sofa on the other side of her mother and said to her father, "Papa, I saw it. The baby really can move. He even kicked my hand. Let me see." Yang Yi's face lit up with joy, but he was also a little nervous. He squatted by the side and reached out to touch Murphy's bulging belly. He didn't know if it would be the same as the previous few times, where it would be in vain. Shishi was beside him, blinking her big eyes and looking at her father's movements. She was also looking forward to it. However, the wait was a little long. A few minutes later, the little girl couldn't hold it in anymore. She muttered, "It's true. The baby was moving just now. Mom said the baby was kicking." At this moment, Yang Yi felt a movement in his hand, but it wasn't under his hand, but next to him. He said to Shishi in surprise, "Shishi, don't talk first. It seems to be moving again." "Yes, it's kicking me." Murphy grabbed Yang Yi's hand and let him touch the place where the baby was moving. "It's here. Do you feel it?" Yang Yi's mouth was wide open, and his eyes were full of smiles. He didn't know what to say and only knew to nod. This kind of movement of life was very wonderful, and there was no way to describe it with words. Yang Yi only felt that it was overflowing with happiness. Shishi was told not to talk by her father just now, but she couldn't help it. Seeing that her father didn't speak, she turned around and squeezed into her father's arms. She pulled her father's clothes and said, "Papa, let me tell you, the baby also kicked my hand." "Did it kick your hand?" Yang Yi and Murphy looked at each other and smiled. Now that the baby's movement had calmed down, Yang Yi withdrew his hand and rubbed Shishi's little head. He said lovingly, "Yes, it kicked my hand, but I don't know if it was with its hand or its foot." "It's fun, isn't it?" Shishi giggled and said, "Yes, it's amazing. I'm just a little regretful that I couldn't be by your mother's side when she was pregnant with you. I didn't experience the feeling when you kicked your mother, and I didn't get to touch her." Although Yang Yi was talking to Sisi, he was looking at Mo Fei with an apologetic look in his eyes. "Don't talk about the past. Besides, Shishi is so active when she sleeps. She must have kicked you a lot." Murphy smiled brightly and winked at Yang Yi mischievously. She said, "This is a kind of compensation." Murphy no longer cared about the past. She just wanted to face the future hand in hand with Yang Yi. "No, Mom said that I fell from the sky like a fairy. I'm different from the baby, so Papa can't see it." She couldn't feel the emotional communication between her parents. Instead, she was excitedly discussing science with her father. She was very serious and anxious to tell her father that it was not what he thought. Haha. The laughter in the villa covered the cicadas outside the house. Chapter 559. A small fetal movement could make Yang Yi and Murphy happy for a long time. However, life didn't always go according to one's wishes, especially a pregnant woman's thoughts. It was even more difficult to understand and adapt to. Murphy was actually already very good. After she became pregnant, she became as gentle as water. Not only did she not have the cold feeling that she used to have when treating outsiders, but she also usually had a gentle smile on her face. Sometimes, when she went to the set with Yang Yi, some small actors who weren't famous would be very curious about why Murphy didn't have the airs of a big star when they saw her. However, for some reason, as her belly grew bigger, Murphy started to lose her temper recently. Sometimes, her temper would come out of nowhere. For example, when there were no more tissues in the toilet, she would ask Yang Yi to bring it over. However, Yang Yi was slightly delayed because of a phone call. When he came over, Murphy couldn't help but complain. Losing her temper was nothing. Yang Yi had read the information before. It said that a pregnant woman's mood was unstable during pregnancy. This was a very normal thing, so he quietly got used to it. However, the problem was that after Murphy lost her temper, her eyes would inexplicably turn red. When her mood swings were more intense, she would even cry and sit on the toilet like she, who had been spanked by her father because she was naughty. Yang Yi looked at Murphy's pitiful appearance and felt pity and helpless. He wouldn't feel angry or impatient because of this. After all, he had read the guide for pregnant women and knew that this was a process that had to be experienced. However, he couldn't let Murphy continue to be upset like this, could he? If her mood swings were more intense, it wouldn't be good for her or the child in her belly. However, Yang Yi was actively looking for a solution, but Murphy herself didn't know why she was so easily upset. Yang Yi didn't know where to start. The filming of The Fugitive gradually came to an end. More and more outdoor scenes were filmed, and the reporters finally managed to capture photos of Yang Yi. The newspapers began to report on Yang Yi's filming. It was something new for Yang Yi to make a movie. After all, Yang Yi was a writer and a singer, but not an actor. His cameo in Fairy Tale was less than a second long. This report still attracted the attention of many fans and book fans. But it wasn't sensational enough. Wasn't it just filming a movie? What was so special about it? Who knows if he's a guest star or the main lead? Moreover, there were hundreds of movies and TV series being filmed in the entertainment industry every day. Yang Yi was not an idol. His fan base only took a glance at this kind of news and then forgot about it. However, the reporters who were bent on creating some big news were not satisfied with this level of exposure. They felt that they could dig up some eye-popping news from this movie. At this time, some well-connected reporters got the news from the film approval department. The screenwriter of The Fugitive was Yang Yi, and the director was Du Yuanlei, the director of the microfilm Fairy Tale that was popular all over the country. Everyone knew that the screenwriter of Fairy Tale was also Yang Yi. Moreover, Yang Yi had also written songs and made commercials in it. Could this be a coincidence? Regardless of whether it was a coincidence or not, the reporters who were good at making groundless accusations and making up stories out of nothing were excited. They began to fabricate a scandal in all seriousness. Model husband or scumbag? Yang Yi suspected of cheating on female university director during Murphy's pregnancy. Yes, this title was very long, but it was enough to attract people's attention. They also cleverly used a loophole in the law to use the ambiguous word suspected, to avoid the trouble of being held accountable for defamation in the future. However, the content was not as explosive as the title. There was no evidence in the whole article. It was just a few photos of the set without any ambiguity. It was really a picture at the beginning, but the content was made up. As the saying goes, the most brilliant lie is always 70% true and 30% false. In the arguments they gave, the rumor that Yang Yi, original address, and Du Yuanlei were both in Jiang River was true. Du Yuanlei filmed the microfilm Fairy Tale written by Yang Yi was true. Now Yang Yi and Du Yuanlei were filming a movie together. That was also true. However, the so-called witnesses who saw Yang Yi and Du Yuanlei kissing, and the so-called rumors that Yang Yi bought a house for Du Yuanlei were all fabricated by the editors. This kind of news was fabricated so that it was difficult for people to make a correct judgment. Many fans still believed it, and many media outlets joined in the fun to repost it. All of a sudden, there was an uproar. Some media outlets even gloated over the news after Yang Yi and Murphy's relationship was confirmed. They then said, "Love dies quickly." This proved that celebrities should keep a low profile in their marriages, so that it would not lead to a real breakup later, and all the good things in the past would become a joke. This was not Yang Yi's malicious publicity for his new movie. He was completely unjustly implicated by these unscrupulous reporters. Mo Xiaochuan's reaction was not slow. Phoebe Studios' official micro-broadcasting even released an announcement. On one hand, they clarified that this was a false story. On the other hand, they also warned the news agency to retract this false report. Otherwise, they would be held legally liable for defamation. However, the effect was not obvious. Yang Yi and Murphy's micro-broadcasting did not update. The netizens thought that the young couple really had a conflict. The fans were anxious. Some extreme fans even ran to Yang Yi's micro-broadcasting Shishi's chef to curse. But what were Yang Yi and Murphy doing? The two of them were thinking of a solution. However, it was not a conflict as the netizens thought. The problem that needed to be solved was also not a crisis of trust. At first, Yang Yi thought that Murphy was really jealous. After he saw the news outside, he did not care about anything else. He quickly ran home and helped Murphy to the sofa. Actually, he did not need to help her. Then he smiled excitedly and said, "I know why you're unhappy. Are you unhappy because I'm filming with Director Du? Are you jealous of Director Du?" Murphy looked at Yang Yi in confusion. She shook her head and said, "No. It must be." Yang Yi laughed and stretched out his hands to rub Murphy's face. He laughed and said, "I saw the news outside. I don't know which unscrupulous reporter made it up. They said that I had an affair with Director Du, and that I had an affair when you were pregnant. Let me tell you, don't believe these people's nonsense. I'm innocent. I only love you in this life." When Murphy heard Yang Yi's confession, she was touched and amused. She patted Yang Yi's hand and said angrily, "Who told you that I'm jealous? I already said that I'm not jealous." Murphy's mood fluctuated, but she was not depressed. Most of the time she was in a good mood. For example, now she was smiling and talking. Yang Yi was stunned. "Isn't it? I thought that you were always angry because of this. When you saw me filming on the set, you thought too much. Am I such a jealous person?" Murphy pursed her lips and said, "Don't I know what's going on between you and Xiaodu? Usually when you're filming, I'll follow you to watch. Then, even if you're not filming, you'll come back to accompany me. Where would you find the time to have an affair? Even if I'm a little jealous sometimes because of other things, I won't suspect you out of nothing just because you're in contact with a woman, right?" It was true. Murphy was not as easily jealous as she was when she was dating Yang Yi. Otherwise, wouldn't Ding Xiang be more suspicious than Du Yuanlei? The time Yang Yi spent with Ding Xiang was even more than the time he spent with Du Yuanlei. Then what's the reason? You'll lose your temper from time to time, and then you'll cry. Yang Yi scratched his head and asked. For some reason, Yang Yi actually hoped that Murphy was jealous at this moment, because at least he could know the reason and find a way to solve Murphy's mood fluctuation problem. Now that Murphy confirmed that she was not jealous, Yang Yi was in a dilemma. "I'm sorry, I also know that it's not right for me to do this." Murphy saw Yang Yi's dilemma and became depressed. She said very reproachfully, "I shouldn't yell at you. I shouldn't be like this. How can I be so barbaric?" Yang Yi felt sorry for his wife. He quickly hugged her in his arms and comforted her. It's okay. I don't care about your temper. I'm just worried about your health and want to help you solve the problem. Do you know why you feel unhappy?" Murphy gently leaned her head on Yang Yi's shoulder and said, "I've also thought about it for a few days. I don't know if it's because of this reason. I feel that after I'm pregnant, I don't have much energy. There's nothing to do and it's very boring. I'm bored and unconsciously irritated. That's the reason." Chapter 560. Murphy's anxiety due to boredom was indeed a very thorny problem. Even if Yang Yi knew the reason, it was difficult to find a suitable solution. Because Mo Fei was not an ordinary pregnant woman. She was different from other women. According to the book, Yang Yi taught Mo Fei to do some home crafts, such as string beads, but Mo Fei was not interested in it at all. She even felt more annoyed because of it. Shishi, come here. Let Mama tell you, you can't be so naughty. What are you doing throwing your toys around? Murphy sometimes couldn't control her temper. When Shishi went a little overboard, she would put on a stern face and scold the little girl. "Mom, it's Bao Bao. He likes to play. I'll throw it to him and he'll catch it." Shishi was a little frightened by her mother's seriousness. She timidly grabbed her two little hands and explained in a low voice, "No matter what Bao Bao does, you have to be educated. You can't throw things around. If you want to play with Bao Bao, you should take a proper dog ball and throw it to Bao Bao to catch it under Dad's supervision outside." Murphy was obviously irritated. She usually didn't scold her daughter so seriously. Even if she did, her voice would be gentle and not as angry as she was now. The little girl lowered her little head, and was a little depressed. Yang Yi couldn't stay out of the matter. He came over, put his arm around Murphy's shoulder, and coaxed her. Okay, it's not a big deal. She is a little naughty, but it's every child's nature to love to play. Didn't you tell me not to stifle their nature? But it's also wrong to do this. You're becoming more and more naughty. You're not ladylike at all. After coaxing Murphy, Yang Yi turned to look at Shishi. The little girl pursed her little mouth and stood there aggrievedly. She was just short of wiping her tears. He had no choice but to turn his head and coax his daughter. Murphy's anger came and went quickly. She wasn't someone who refused to admit her mistakes. When she calmed down, she went back to hug Shishi and apologized. Shishi, I'm sorry. Mom lost her temper just now. It's not that Mom doesn't like you, but sometimes she really can't control her temper. After listening to her father's explanation, Shishi was no longer so aggrieved. At this moment, the little girl obediently leaned on her mother's arm, then raised her little hand, touched her mother's face and said with a smile, Mom, I'm fine. Papa said that Mom is going to give birth to a baby, so. Shishi couldn't remember how to say the word irritated. After a while, she skipped it and said, Mom will be angry, but Papa said that Mom isn't really angry, and she's not scolding me. And yes, you can understand Mama. Mama is very happy. Murphy hugged her daughter, and her face was pressed against the little girl's tender and cool little face. She was so moved that she almost burst into tears. Understand, Mom. Shishi felt that she had learned another word, and her eyes were curved with a smile. However, whether learning to make handicrafts or learn to draw, neither could eliminate the irritability in Murphy's heart. Murphy only liked music, and she was not interested in anything else. However, when Yang Yi took her to the studio to record songs, Murphy felt dull and lost. What on earth was going on? Or was Murphy's boredom not because she had nothing to do, but because there were too few people who could communicate with her? Yang Yi felt that he should hold a small party and invite Shishi's friends to come and play, and bring their mothers along so that Murphy could chat with them. Perhaps in this way, Murphy could eliminate the depression in her heart and become cheerful again. However, before that, Yang Yi had to continue filming. The Fugitive was almost finished, and Shishi's scenes had already been finished. However, Yang Yi, Gengsha, and Guizi's scenes were almost all over the movie, so during the day, Yang Yi had to continue working on the set. Today there was something extra. Paul Tenier, a famous director from America, had arrived. Yang Yi took some time to meet him and talk about the plot of Prison Break. When Yang Yi saw Paul Tenier, it was difficult to tell that this old man in his 50s was of Chinese descent, because Paul Tenier was like other foreigners. His eyes were sunken, his eyebrows were high, and his skin was relatively white. However, his hair was black, as pure black as an Asian's. Yang Yi, I think your name is very similar to my surname. It's easy to get mixed up, so I prefer to call you Yang. Paul Tenier was very enthusiastic. When they met, he chatted with Yang Yi with a smile, as if they were old friends who had not seen each other for many years. You can call me Leon. Yang Yi smiled. They still communicated in English, because Paul Tenier's Chinese was so bad that he could not even speak simple greetings. My father died when I was very young, so I didn't have many opportunities to learn Chinese. It's a pity, Paul Tenier said with regret. However, my father did give me a Chinese name. What is it? Yang Yi asked with interest. I'm a tough talker, Paul Tenier said with his awkward Chinese pronunciation. What? Sorry, I didn't hear you clearly. Yang Yi was confused. Paul Tenier had to borrow a piece of paper. He took out a pen from his pocket, wrote his name on it, and handed it to Yang Yi. Paul Tenier's Chinese writing was not bad. At least, he wrote his name well, which felt like it was written in a clerical style. Ishuehan. So that's his name. What the hell is a tough talker? Yang Yi looked at Paul Tenier dumbfounded. Paul Tenier looked at Yang Yi expectantly and said, What do you think? I've been practicing writing my name and signing autographs for my fans. I think it looks good. It's written well. But your name should come from an ancient Chinese poem, Yang Yi said. I know. Paul Tenier knew he should be called Ishuehan. The director in his 50s was as happy as a child. He read, Bang Shi Ishuehan. It's a story about a killer. It's the wind blowing Ishuehan. The hero left and never came back. Yang Yi corrected his pronunciation, but he didn't intend to argue with Ishuehan about Chinese pronunciation. Mr. E, let's talk about your understanding of my movie. How do you want to shoot it? Ishuehan became serious when talking about work. His blue eyes revealed a wise look. He said every actor in Prison Break is very important. We will find the right actors. Your movie gave me a big surprise because almost all the characters have distinctive characteristics. I also saw that you drew pictures of them. Although we can't find the exact same actors according to your pictures, I think that in order to restore the excitement of the story as much as possible, we should at least choose the same type of actors. In addition to discussing the actors, Ishuehan also talked about the plot of the story. Of course, there wasn't much to say here, because the original plot of the TV series had been sorted out in the book. Ishuehan could almost shoot according to Yang Yi's plot. But Ishuehan wasn't done yet. He also told Yang Yi about the shooting techniques he wanted to use, as well as some editing methods. These involve some technical things. If Yang Yi didn't understand some of it when he watched Du Yuanlei on the set, he might not have understood it. This is a very exciting TV series, but I hope that you don't sell this book to the United States before the TV series is broadcast. Otherwise, all the plot will be spoiled, and it will be terrible for our audience. Ishuehan said to Yang Yi humorously. Of course, it's my fault for being so detailed and comprehensive. Yang Yi couldn't help but laugh. Yang Yi's conversation with Ishuehan went smoothly. Ishuehan was indeed an excellent director. Other than his Chinese being a bit clumsy, he was impeccable in other aspects. He wasn't an armchair strategist. In the TV series that Ishuehan had filmed before, it showed that he was very good at filming suspense and crime plots. He could capture the audience's attention through the tight and tense pace. In addition, the negotiation team's price negotiation was coming to an end. The film and television rights of Prison Break were almost set in stone. Chapter 561. When he came to Sahara Publishing to meet with Paul Tenier, Yang Yi also handed the draft of his new book to Lu Benji. When he came out of the meeting with Paul Tenier, Lu Benji was still engrossed in the new book in his office. He didn't even hear Yang Yi knock on the door and come in. Only when Yang Yi came closer did Lu Benji raise his head absent-mindedly. He pointed at the printed draft in his hand while looking at Yang Yi. His mouth opened, but he didn't know where to start with all the things he wanted to say to Yang Yi. It's unbelievable, really. I didn't think that a novel could be written like this. Lu Benji tried his best to express his amazement, but any description seemed a little weak. You told me that this book would incorporate some of the characteristics of web novels. It's really hard to imagine that it would be embodied in such a way. It's too amazing. Too wonderful. Is that so? I think so too. Yang Yi smiled in response. When he read this novel back then, he also had the same reaction. He was full of admiration for the author's imagination. To be able to write such a well-designed and interlocked novel. It was not a mystery novel, but it was better than a mystery novel. In order to conform to the characteristics of the country, Yang Yi still changed the characters' names to Chinese names, and made some adjustments to the background. However, he did not make too many changes to the original text. Unlike The Fugitive and Journey in White Night, he did not want to mess up the narrative order and rhythm of the original text. Leaving the book to Lu Benji to arrange, Yang Yi returned home. However, after some discussion, the location of the party was moved from Yang Yi's villa to Lanzhou's Kai family's villa. The main reason was that Boss Lan's villa had a very large and beautiful swimming pool. The swimming pool was also divided into an adult area and a children's area. The depth of the children's area was no more than 0.9 meters, and it could be adjusted to be as low as 0.5 meters. Our swimming pool is still at a constant temperature, but it's not open for summer now. Little Yang, little Mo, let me tell you, I'm not bragging. You guys coming here to play in winter is as comfortable as soaking in a hot spring. Lans Hao Kai waved his hand and said proudly. Unable to resist Boss Lan's enthusiasm, Yang Yi decided to change the venue. However, before they started the party, they had to inform the other children and their parents that they were welcome to come over and play. At this time, Xixi and Lan Xian, the two girls, were playing on the bed. They hadn't had enough fun in the boxing gym, so they picked up the blankets and pillows on the bed and started boxing. It had to be said that in the eyes of children, any simple game would be very interesting as long as they played with their friends. Seeing them kneeling on the bed, then vigorously waving their little pink fists on the soft and fluffy quilt, and then letting out a pleasant laughter. As if that wasn't enough, they even wiggled their little butts and moved to each other's side. They squeezed into a ball and fought to hit each other's pillows. Ha ha ha, Xixi, you're pressing on top of me. Lan Xian's loud voice and loud laughter could be heard through the bedroom door. I'm not pressing on top of you. Hee hee, I don't even have any energy left. Xixi was overjoyed. She laughed so hard that her whole body went limp. She leaned on Lan Xian's back and laughed softly. Xixi, Xianair, come, I have a mission for you guys now. Murphy brought over a stack of cards and walked into the bedroom with a smile. What mission? Xixi turned over and lifted her little head. Her hair was a little messy, as if she had just woken up, but her big eyes were very lively and definitely not sleepy. Mom, what mission? There's a mission? Lan Xian also turned around and shouted excitedly. In fact, it wasn't a big mission. It was just for the two girls to make invitations together. Yang Yi had just written the words on the invitations, imitating Xixi's and Lan Xian's intonations. All that was left was for Xixi and Lan Xian to sign their names on the 3 invitations. This wasn't difficult. Xixi could already write her own name very skillfully. Lan Xian also learned to write her own name seriously from her mother after she was stopped by the security guard Uncle Li at the door. Now, although her writing was crooked, it could still be seen. However, Xixi and Lan Xian were not satisfied with this. Xianair, I want to draw on it. Xixi didn't wait for Lan Xian to finish writing. She said the idea that suddenly popped into her mind. This isn't nice. Drawing will be nice. Alright, I want to draw too. Lan Xian nodded her head. The little girl was also in high spirits. Lan Xian and Xixi's education was still not quite the same. Other than kindergarten, Lan Xian sometimes had to learn some other things, such as drawing and playing the piano. Boss Lan wanted to give her daughter the best education, so she also hired a tutor to teach Lan Xian these arts at home. Putting aside the pros and cons of this slightly advanced education method, Lan Xian could still draw now. Therefore, after getting her little friend's approval, Xixi happily jumped off the chair and ran to the bookshelf to take out her colored pencils. The colorful colored pencils made Lan Xian gasp in envy. Of course, Lan Xian's house also had paintbrushes and a lot of paints, but they were all watercolors. I'm going to draw a rainbow here. Xixi excitedly pointed at the invitation letter for Yang Luoqi. Then I'll draw a little pig here. I want to use this red color. Lan Xian also picked out a pink paintbrush. She didn't even raise her head as she spoke, and she had already begun drawing with her paintbrush. Xixi was halfway through her drawing when she couldn't help but look up at her little friend's drawing. She couldn't help but giggle. Xianair, you drew a pig. Yes. Then I want to draw a cat. I like your cat, Lan Xian said, but her hands didn't stop moving. Just like that, 3 strange invitations were sent out. The children who received the invitations would bring their parents to Xianair's house to play this weekend. Then, Uncle Yang Yi would prepare a lot of delicious food for them. Murphy didn't care about the rumors about Yang Yi and Du Yuanlei made up by the media, and Yang Yi didn't care about it either. He thought that the studio would release a clarification statement, but they still didn't know the extent of the media's gossip. Under the influence of some people, the rumors about Yang Yi and Du Yuanlei became more and more serious, and Du Yuanlei's past relationship was also exposed. Of course, this time, the media used facts to speak, and really exposed Du Yuanlei's past relationship. She fell in love with her high school classmate in college for 3 years, and they were entangled for 1 year, until her boyfriend cheated on her. Such a private matter, only Du Yuanlei's classmates during her undergraduate studies knew about it. Coincidentally, one of them worked in a TV station in Xiangnan. It was difficult to find the source of the news, and there was no point in investigating, because Du Yuanlei's hidden sadness was all exposed. There were also some photos that completely showed Du Yuanlei's tragedy. They tore Du Yuanlei's broken heart into pieces again, and served it on a plate for the world to see. But other people's sadness was just a carnival of the unscrupulous gossip media. They used this as a pretext to proudly reveal why Du Yuanlei had interfered with Yang Yi and Murphy's marriage. This is a broken jar after being cheated on. She was interfered with by a third party, and now she's the third party. With Du's level of infatuation, I'm sure she'll force Yang Yi and Murphy to divorce. Was there an end to it? Yang Yi originally did not read the reports of these gossip media, but the next day he saw Du Yuanlei forcing a smile and insisting on not letting her emotions affect her work. But after filming in the morning, she could not help but wipe her tears. Yang Yi saw Du Yuanlei's shoulders from afar, and she looked very sad. Only then did he hear the news from Guozi and the others. They were all close friends, including Wang Chao, Zhu Liang, and the others. They all knew Du Yuanlei's character, and Long and I was the earliest with Du Yuanlei. She knew that the newspaper had indeed exposed Du Yuanlei's scars. Yang Yi was silent at that time. When he returned home that night, he discussed with Murphy and shot a video. Even Murphy, who had been unwilling to appear on camera after her pregnancy, appeared in front of the camera and shot the video with Yang Yi. They used their loving performance to clear up the scandal. Of course, most importantly, they supported Du Yuanlei and praised her directing ability and professionalism. We shouldn't judge a director based on her appearance, figure, or relationship history, but based on her work. Whether it's the documentary XXXX or the short film Fairy Tale. Du Yuanlei is a very outstanding young director. Although she's still a student and this is her first time directing a real film, we have confidence in her. At the same time, Yang Yi and Murphy both appealed to the media to have a conscience when reporting entertainment news. Please don't make groundless accusations and hurt an innocent child. After the short film was posted on micro-broadcasting, friends in the industry who had previously contacted Yang Yi and Murphy and knew the truth all reposted it for Yang Yi and Murphy. Not only Chen Yijie and Chen Fengchen, but also Luo Xian and Zhu Jie. In fact, many celebrities who had been troubled by gossip and were not close to the media also reposted the video and cheered for Du Yuanlei. Although it felt like they were trying to mend the pen after the sheep were lost, the situation gradually changed. The media no longer scolded Du Yuanlei one-sidedly. With more and more people comforting and supporting her, Du Yuanlei pulled herself together. The scar would still be bloody, but hopefully, it would heal one day. Chapter 562. Amidst the storm, the filming of The Fugitive was finally completed. Du Yuanlei, Wang Chao, and the others did not rest. They devoted themselves wholeheartedly to the editing of the movie. Yang Yi could not help with this work. He was on vacation, so he had time to play with Murphy and Shishi. Finally, it was the weekend. Although it had rained heavily 2 days ago, the weather did not cool down. The blue sky was illuminated by the scorching hot sun. Even the air was hot. The girls ran outside for a while, and their little singlets were soaked with sweat. However, this did not stop their enthusiasm. The children ran around happily on the grass. Fortunately, the osmanthus trees in the yard were working hard to spread their thick and lush leaves, shielding them from the scorching sun. This was the super big mansion of Lance Haokai's family. Yang Luoqi, Chen Shiyan, and Nan Jiaoyu, who had received the invitation, brought their parents to Lan Xian's house to play. Of course, when they saw Yang Yi and Murphy, the parents could not help but laugh and tease them. Fortunately, the newspaper is lying. When we saw the news in the newspaper, we were all dumbfounded. We thought that the two of you were so close. How could there be any problems? Then we thought, if the two of you were not well, what would Shishi do? I can help take care of her for a while. Our family's old Nan used to look forward to having a son, but now he regrets not having a daughter, Nan Jiaoyu's mother joked. Everyone was joking. Murphy understood. She held Yang Yi's hand and smiled to show off her relationship with Yang Yi. She said, No, Yang Yi is very good to me. Don't believe the gossip in the news. Who knows how many of them are fake? The main theme of this summer party was, of course, swimming to relieve the heat. This was also what the children looked forward to the most. After changing them into swimsuits, the little guys couldn't wait to jump into the water. The shallow water in the children's pool only reached their thighs. When they lowered their heads, they could still see their feet through the clear water, so they didn't feel afraid. After jumping in, they even started playing. The most excited one was Lon Xian. It was rare for her to have so many good friends to swim with her. After getting into the water, she couldn't wait to scoop up water and sprinkle it on her friends. Ah, ah. Shishi's face was splashed with water, and her bangs were wet. She screamed excitedly, and her high-pitched voice revealed her good lung capacity. What's wrong? Yang Yi had just turned around when he heard his daughter's voice. He quickly turned his head, thinking that something had happened. Xian air splashed water on my face. Shishi seemed to be complaining, but she wasn't complaining. The little girl wiped her face, and then her little mouth broke into a bright smile. Obviously, she was enjoying it. Before Yang Yi could reply, the swimming pool was bustling with activity. Chun Shuryan fought back and splashed water on Lon Xian. Nan Zhaoyu, who had just entered the water, saw this scene. The shy little boy, who was only wearing small pants, seemed to have become lively. He was so excited that he waved his small hands and splashed water on his friends. It just so happened that the water splashed on Yang Luoqi, who was happily watching the fire from the other side of the river. The little girl Chi-Chi screamed again and again. Zhaoyu. Shishi turned her small head and didn't care to talk to her father. She giggled and fought back with Yang Luoqi. Suddenly, the pool was in a mess. The little guys had a water fight. It was not particularly fierce, but their cries were like flying water droplets, rippling in the air. Yang Yi smiled and shook his head. He really didn't know what to do with these little guys. On the other hand, Lon Xian's dog, the big white Samoyed dog, wandered around the pool. It seemed to be a little anxious, turning left and right. It was unknown whether it wanted to go into the water, or was worried that these human children would drown. Yang Yi walked over and patted its head to appease it. He smiled and said, "You can't go into the water. Now it's the children playing." After the water fight for a while, Wu Yu came to stop them. She was not at ease because although the water in the children's pool was not deep, the little guys' heads would still be submerged after lying down. So she also held a bunch of small swimming rings and distributed them to the little guys. "I don't want swimming rings. I can swim." Lon Xian waved her hand and said loudly. Lon Xian just swam a little. The fat little girl was as flexible as a fish in the water, which surprised Yang Yi a little. However, it was not hard to imagine. After all, Lon Xian had a swimming pool at home. She learned to swim from an early age. She was a little fatter and had more buoyancy. It was easier for her to learn to swim than Shishi. Shishi also waved her hand with Lon Xian, but she was more polite and said, "Thank you, Auntie, but I don't want it because I can swim too." After that, Shishi and Lon Xian looked at each other. The two girls giggled, but no one knew what they were laughing about. She has been learning at home for more than a month. She really can swim. Yang Yi smiled and explained to Wu Yu, "Mom, I don't want the swimming ring either." Yang Luoqi liked to play with Shishi. Seeing that Shishi didn't want it, she tried hard to untie the swimming ring, but it was a little troublesome because her arms were in the way. "You can't. You have to use the swimming ring. You don't even know how to swim. How can you force yourself?" Wu Yu said. Yang Guo came over at this time. He also walked into the pool and smiled at his daughter. "Okay, Dad will teach you how to swim. When you learn how to swim, you can also swim without the swimming ring like them." They started to swim. On the other side of the adult pool, only Lan Zhoukai and Chen Guoqiang were swimming. However, they only swam around twice. They leaned against the side of the pool and chatted with Nanny Yun, who had recovered but was still not very nimble and couldn't get into the water. Murphy, Wu Jingjing and the other mothers didn't swim much. They were more like taking a bath and chatting near the children's pool. Wu Yu and Nan Zhaoyu's mothers were actually a little worried about their children. However, Yang Yi and Yang Guo were at the children's pool, so it wasn't a big problem. Lon Xian swam to Shishi's side and said, "Shishi, let's have a swimming competition. I'll swim faster than you. Over there." "Okay." Shishi happily stood up in the pool and nodded. "I also want to compete with you." Chun Shuryan, who was wearing the swimming ring and kicking the water carelessly, also came over. Yang Yi saw the movement over there, and just watched silently. Then he looked away and patted Nan Jiaoyu's butt. He smiled and said, "Okay, that's the posture. Try to swim. If you can swim, it means you can swim." Of course Yang Yi was just coaxing him. Nan Jiaoyu hadn't learned how to swim yet. With the swimming ring on, he only knew how to step on the bottom of the pool slowly. Yang Yi couldn't stand it and taught him a lesson. Of course, it was impossible to really teach him how to swim. After all, the time was too short. Being able to teach him how to float with the swimming ring, and how to kick the water with his hands and feet to swim toward his goal on the surface of the water, was already good enough for him to learn these movements. When Nan Jiaoyu started to kick the water, the three girls had already started. She shouted, 3, 2, 1. As the little girl's soft voice fell, the three figures paddled forward in the water. Chen Shiyan didn't know how to swim. She only knew how to kick the water with the swimming ring, so she gradually fell behind. Lan Xian swam very well. Her reaction to the start was the fastest. She swam very far away in an instant. Moreover, she was like a frog, kicking the water with her little head bobbing up and down. Her breathing maintained a good rhythm. She learned freestyle from her father. The little girl had already finished her apprenticeship, and her swimming posture was very beautiful. In the process of learning how to swim, the little girl who had cried and shouted that she didn't dare to swim in the deep water, showed a good swimming ability that even Yang Yi didn't expect. The speed at which she learned how to breathe was faster than the speed at which she learned freestyle. And after learning how to breathe, she naturally learned how to swim very quickly. Although she had only learned how to swim freestyle, one could see the little girl in the water. Her thin little arms occasionally flipped over the surface of the water, drawing beautiful sparkling arcs. Her little feet were also like paddles, rhythmically beating the water surface. The tumbling waves pushed the little girl forward quickly. Cece was tall and her legs were long and slender. Therefore, she was like a beautiful little swordfish in the water, drawing silver ripples in the water. Her swimming was beautiful and fast. Although the start was slow because of the shouting, she eventually caught up with Lan Xian. The two girls didn't know who was faster and who was slower. In any case, they swam to the opposite shore and came out of the water at the same time. While the two girls were still chattering about who was first, the gratified Yang Yi had already retracted his gaze and turned to look at Murphy and the others. Seeing and hearing this scene, Yang Yi suddenly understood the crux of Murphy's unhappiness. Chapter 563. What did women like to talk about the most? Gossip, clothes, cosmetics. However, Murphy and her group of mothers did not talk about these this time. Instead, they asked about the entertainment circle around Murphy, a big star they were all familiar with. Then as they chatted, they began to sing. They were singing Murphy's song. When Yang Yi looked over, they were happily singing. In a strange city, in a familiar corner. It was a very sad song. When they sang it in unison, the sad atmosphere had long disappeared, and laughter was mixed in. It had to be said that this song was indeed very popular. It was even more popular than the difficult Listen to the Sea. Everyone in the group could sing it, especially Wu Jingjing. She sang it quite well. After all, she was a stay-at-home mother and had time to hum songs. Wait a minute. I want to hear Murphy sing this climax. Wu Jingjing did not want to steal the limelight. She smiled and asked everyone to stop. She said, I used to listen to records. Did I have a chance to see Murphy's concert? Today, no matter what, I want to hear Murphy sing live. The other mothers also clapped and cheered. Wu Yu bent over with laughter and said, Yes, we are showing off in front of an expert. Murphy did not refuse. She sat by the pool and played with the water gently with her feet. If it were not for her big belly, she would have been as playful as a young girl. With a happy smile, she gently continued the part they had just sung and hummed. In the sandstorm, watching you go away, I am so sad that I can't control myself. As expected of Mo Fei. This part of the song was supposed to be slightly higher in pitch, and the rhythm was a little rushed, but at this time, she actually changed her singing style. Although it was not as sad as the original singing style, the light humming and the unique accent made this part of the lyrics fit well in the happy atmosphere. At the children's pool, Yang Yi listened to Murphy's singing and turned to look at her. In a trance, Yang Yi seemed to see Murphy before she was pregnant. He looked thoughtfully, ignoring Nan Zhaoyu, who was wearing a swimming ring. Nan Zhaoyu swam and his posture was messed up. He was like a dog crawling in the water, and only moved a little bit after a long time. When they came back in the evening, Shi, who was very tired after swimming, fell asleep not long after. After Yang Yi took care of Shi, he came downstairs. Murphy, who had just taken a shower, was peeling an apple in the living room. She still got hungry easily at night, but pregnant women shouldn't eat too much midnight snacks. Eating too much would increase the burden on the stomach, and it was easy to absorb too much energy. Do you want to eat an apple? I'll cut half of it for you. I can't eat so much anyway, Murphy said as she cut half of the apple and handed it to Yang Yi with a smile. Murphy was in a good mood. She looked at Yang Yi with a smile. There was no burden and anxiety in her clear eyes. Obviously, her mood was eased today and she was a lot more relaxed. Yang Yi took the apple and took a bite. Then he smiled and asked, "Honey, let me ask you, do you want to sing very much?" Ah. Murphy was a little confused. I mean, you said that you felt bored before. Is it because you don't have a chance to sing? Yang Yi added. I'm not talking about singing in the recording studio or at home, but the kind of singing where there is an audience and fans below the stage. Then you can sing for them. It was not as simple as singing. Yang Yi also thought of writing a new song for Murphy, but the effect was not obvious. The reason why Murphy was so happy today was that the mothers were also listening to Murphy's singing. Her singing was listened to, cheered, and liked. This was the real reason why Murphy was in a good mood. Murphy was stunned for a moment. She thought about it carefully. When she thought of singing in front of an audience, she did feel a surge of anger that had been tormenting her for a long time in the past month. After thinking it through, Murphy pursed her lips. She grabbed Yang Yi's clothes with both hands and said sadly, "Honey, I want to hold a concert. After I came back, I only held 3 concerts." Yes, a long time ago, Murphy told Yang Yi that she did not care about sales or awards. She just wanted to continue singing. She wanted to stand on the stage and sing for the fans who liked her. No wonder when Yang Yi first came to this world, Murphy, who had not made a comeback yet, had such a bad temper. No wonder now that she was pregnant, except for recording, Murphy, who was basically in a state of rest, would occasionally lose her temper. Murphy wanted to hold a concert so much. First she retired for 5 years. Then she finally held 3 concerts with great difficulty. Then, she was interrupted by the pregnancy problem. How could she not be depressed? However, after Murphy acted coquettishly with Yang Yi, she immediately worried that Yang Yi would feel embarrassed. She quickly waved her hand and said, "Actually, it's not necessary to hold a concert. I don't think so. I don't have the conditions to hold a concert now." Yang Yi rubbed Murphy's face with heartache and said, Yes. Why are you still denying it? Now that the difficulties and the crux of the problem are in front of us, we have to think of a relatively compromised solution together." "What solution?" Murphy looked at Yang Yi eagerly. "I thought of one. Listen to it and see if it's feasible." Yang Yi said, "That is, we can pick 20 to 30 to 40 fans and invite them to Jiangcheng. Then, we can hold a meeting with your hardcore fans. The time doesn't need to be too long, about 2 hours, depending on the situation. Then in this meeting, you can sing for the fans. You don't have to work too hard and have more rest. During the rest period, you can talk to the fans and let some fans talk about what might happen after they like your songs." Yang Yi spoke eloquently. Murphy looked at him admiringly and listened carefully. The more she listened, the more blurred Murphy's expression became. Obviously, she was intoxicated by the scene described by Yang Yi. This was considered a small concert, and it was very casual. She could communicate more with the fans. Murphy was already imagining herself singing in front of dozens of fans. How is it? Is this method feasible? Of course, I know it's a little difficult for you because you don't want the fans to see it at this time. Yang Yi smiled. It's okay. I'm very happy. I think it's okay. Murphy quickly shook her head and nodded. In that case, I'll call Shawan tomorrow, and let her arrange a concert for you as soon as possible to see the effect. Yang Yi said with a smile. Hubby, you're so nice. You came up with such a good idea for me. Murphy was in a good mood. She even hugged Yang Yi's arm and said sweetly. Yang Yi's arm was clamped by Murphy's chest. After pregnancy, the treasure that was already not small became a lot bigger and softer. With this clamp, Yang Yi felt his spirits rise. However, it was a pity that although they could have sex during pregnancy, they couldn't do it too frequently and without restraint. And the day before yesterday I want you to go with me and then accompany me. Murphy put her head in Yang Yi's ear and said coquettishly like a child. Okay, of course I'll go with you. If I don't go with you, how can I be at ease? Yang Yi was a little restless, but he could only suppress it and said. Hee, hubby is the best. Murphy's current mood was so happy that she felt like flying. This was the right mood during pregnancy. Mo Fei was so happy that she continued to say on Yang Yi's shoulder. Honey, I feel that sometimes I really bring you a lot of trouble, because I really don't like many things, and when things don't go my way, I have a bad temper. It's hard to accept. No, this is the emotional performance of pregnancy. You read the book, so I don't blame you. Yang Yi kissed Murphy's forehead, and the turmoil in his heart calmed down a little. If only I could be like you, Murphy suddenly said. How about me? Yang Yi asked curiously. You're easy to satisfy. And you're also very patient, whether it's me or she. Murphy murmured. And you have a wide range of interests and you do everything well. Even if you can't write books, you can write songs or write scripts or make movies. You never feel that life is boring, unlike me. It seems that I can't sing, so I feel separated from the world. Your life every day is very meaningful. Murphy was still muttering, but Yang Yi was stunned. My life every day is very meaningful. Is it really like this? Chapter 564. Mo Fei said that his life was meaningful every day, but Yang Yi didn't think so. Because in his life every day, except for watching Cece grow up day by day, which made him feel fulfilled, nothing else was meaningful. Writing books and songs, Murphy thought he was composing in the study room, but Yang Yi knew that these weren't his works. Sometimes, in order to conform to the settings of this world, Yang Yi had to make artistic changes to these works, but according to the copyright laws of this world, these works were still plagiarized by him. Of course, legally, no one could pursue Yang Yi's responsibility. Who would know that these works came from another world? But for Yang Yi himself, even if he didn't care about it at all, he couldn't deny that his life's value wasn't reflected. The responsibility of taking care of his wife and children covered up the emptiness in Yang Yi's heart. In the past, Yang Yi thought that since he was reborn, he could take advantage of the fact that he wasn't being chased by assassins to enjoy the life of an ordinary person, and wake up naturally. Then he would have a beautiful and pure wife in his arms, and a cute and sensible daughter on his back. He didn't envy them. At most, he would write about his past life in exchange for living expenses, as if this kind of life was enough, and he would live a normal life. However, this wasn't the case. Yang Yi couldn't sleep until he woke up naturally. He still maintained the habit of waking up early like he did in his past life, and persisted in exercising to maintain his body at a good level. He also couldn't be like Yang Guo, who was willing to retire at the top of the tide, and could stay in Gumu with his beloved Xiao Longnu for decades. Murphy dragged him to sing, and Yang Yi went. Although he was forced by the situation, and didn't enjoy the stage like Murphy, it had to be said that singing in front of tens of thousands of people, Yang Yi's heart was very satisfied, as if he had reached a milestone in his life. Yang Yi felt that he didn't like to show his face, and it was best to hide behind the scenes and do what he could. But Murphy told him that he liked to act in movies, so he gave it a try. Of course, Yang Yi later realized that he wasn't like Guizi, who had a particularly deep obsession with acting in movies. However, he did like to play the movie characters he liked. If he played Ludi well, he would be able to restore the original cold, but kind big man. He would even integrate his own understanding into it. If he acted even better, Yang Yi felt that his heart would be satisfied. There was nothing wrong with living a normal and happy life. Yang Yi didn't dislike it, and he wouldn't change his appearance and live a busy life without caring for his family. But he felt that he should find his own way to do it, and then fight for it, creating his own value. Otherwise, the emptiness in his heart would explode one day. But what did Yang Yi want to do? There wasn't a question, there was no answer. Yang Yi began to dig into the memories of his previous life. What did he like to do in his previous life? Singing didn't really count. After all, his voice and face were destroyed in his previous life. He could only appreciate pop music and couldn't hum it. Writing? Or writing his own novel? That was a little difficult. Yang Yi liked to read, and his writing was good. It could be seen from the successful adaptations of novels in this life. But if he really wanted to write a novel, Yang Yi lacked the inspiration. Then, the only thing he really liked was pure music. Once upon a time he sat in the middle of an empty shelter, wearing a super hi-fi headset, listening to Sojiro's original scenery of Hometown. In the beautiful sound of the ocarina, it was as if his soul floated out, as if he could feel the author's homesickness. That scene was his soul riding a high-speed train, shuttling through the endless fields, passing by mountains and rivers. When he took off his headset, he didn't know when, but tears were already streaming down his face. Yes, although he didn't know where his hometown was in the Chinese mainland, but in terms of music, it didn't prevent him from emotionally resonating with this song. Of course, it wasn't just original scenery of Hometown that was played with special instruments. There were many, such as Mr. Hisaishi's Accompanying You, also known as City in the Sky by everyone, the beautiful and romantic canon, the light but gripping Mark of the Rain, and so on. Of course, there was also the domestic piano of the night, the violin version of Butterfly Lovers, and so on. There was too much pure music played with instruments, so beautiful that it was suffocating. In his previous life, Yang Yi had also tried to perform the works of these masters himself. Although he played a few basic instruments quite well, his picky ears could still tell that there was a difference. So he had been practicing until he arrived in this world. In this world he didn't practice playing pure music. Perhaps because of Murphy he put more energy into pop music. Of course, being able to sing, and being able to freely control different vocal ranges, was something that made Yang Yi excited. But now that he thought about it carefully, Yang Yi still liked pure music. It was just that he hadn't taken this path yet, even if Murphy gave him a violin. However, in this aspect, how could Yang Yi show his value in life? Was it still the same as before, copying and writing, and bringing in the classic pure music from his previous life? But in this way, what was the difference from what he did before? How could he create value and achieve meaning? Yang Yi thought for a long time in bed that night, and finally, he made a decision. I want to compose my own music, Yang Yi said to himself. Composing music wasn't a simple matter. It wasn't something that could be done just by talking about it. Even if it was a student from a professional class, it wasn't necessarily possible to write a song that was barely worth listening to. Moreover, Yang Yi wanted to compose, and it wasn't just any song. He wanted to create classics like Mark of the Rain and Lovers of the Liang. This ambition seemed to be a little too big, and also seemed to be a little overconfident. There was only a wall between a genius and a madman. He wasn't a genius, so he could only be a madman or a fool. Of course, Yang Yi wouldn't just create his own classic, and not bring in the classics from his previous life. That would be a pity. He still wanted to play it himself. But Yang Yi felt that no matter how difficult this crazy idea was to realize, he should give it a try. Starting from learning the basics of composing, starting from small pieces of music, starting from the simplest piano or violin, Yang Yi had already thought of a path for himself. Composing a song might not be too difficult, but composing a classic was definitely not a goal that could be achieved with hard work. Yang Yi even planned to make it his life goal. He didn't need to be too anxious, and he didn't need to separate his life. He didn't need to be like Beethoven and torment himself. It didn't matter. Yang Yi could use his leisure time, such as when Shishi went to school, and when Murphy went to work. Or even in his ordinary life, such as traveling with his family, he could slowly learn and accumulate. He could listen to more of this world's music, absorb more nutrients, embrace more of this world and life, and gain inspiration from it. In his lifetime, as long as he could create his own classic music, it would be his dream come true. Of course, Even if he couldn't create it in the end, Yang Yi felt that it didn't matter. The process of composing would definitely allow him to grow and create value. This was also a manifestation of his life's meaning. Yang Yi felt that it was necessary for him to go to school to further his studies. Chapter 565. When Mo Xiaowan received Yang Yi's notice, she began to arrange for the company's staff to organize a lottery for Murphy's hardcore fans to participate in Murphy's fan meet and greet via microbroadcasting. Because the fan meet and greet did not charge admission fees, and there was a limit on the number of people who could attend, it immediately caused a huge sensation. Fans forwarded comments, tagged their friends, and waited for the lottery. They hoped to be the lucky one and be able to get close to their idol. Some rich fans also joined in. To them, the cost of admission was not a problem, but Murphy was indeed a rare sight. This was a rare opportunity. The fan meeting was not a new thing, but using the micro-broadcast to repost the lucky draw, to distribute the tickets, this ingenious approach still attracted some media reports. Moreover, Mo Fei had been pregnant for more than 6 months, so it was quite unexpected for her to show up again. Unfortunately, when some reporters asked Phoebe Studio for confirmation, Mo Xiaowan regretfully told them that the fan meet and greet was private and would not invite friends from the media to report it. Yang Yi did not care about how the media discussed it. Seeing Murphy actively preparing for the fan meet and greet with a cheerful smile on her face, he could finally put down the worries in his heart. A few days later, the coffee shop on the street corner reopened. After more than a month, the coffee shop was finally renovated and the smell was removed. Therefore, Yang Yi came a day earlier to clean up, then drove Murphy and Shishi over to play. This reopening was the same as the first opening a year ago. There was no grand ceremony, nor were there any decorations. Yang Yi just opened the door, hung up the sign, and invited 2 or 3 friends over for coffee and a chat. The new coffee shop was very lively. There was a new wooden coffee table, a solid wood frame, and a round-back coffee chair made of natural seaweed vines. The partitions and bookshelves were all made of dark and elegant wood. Even the glazed lamps had wooden shells. The overall tone was very consistent and gave people a sense of harmony. Other than the wall with the blackboard and the graffiti space, the wallpaper on the other walls and pillars were all pictures of broken walls and tiles. However, in the middle of the broken walls and tiles, there were birds jumping on them. Every bird was of a different species. Some had brownish-red wings like an eagle, while others were white. There was a little wren that was black all over, but its beak was orange-red. It tilted its head, and its eyes, which were about the size of peppercorns, seemed to be looking outside through the wallpaper. It looked very lifelike. These broken walls and tiles, as well as these birds, coupled with the ingeniously planted devil's ivy on the partitions, and the branches of devil's ivy hanging down from the bookshelves, the whole coffee shop reflected a sense of vitality. This added a layer of magical meaning to the name, the corner coffee shop. When you walked past the corner, you suddenly found a magical coffee shop. This was a chance encounter, a beautiful chance encounter. When you stepped into the coffee shop, you would have a strange imagination. It was as if the city had degenerated and people had returned to the beautiful forest, and your originally impetuous mind would suddenly calm down at this moment. Of course, your originally calm mind would be happy at this moment. Wow, Papa, I like this bird. It's the most beautiful. She was like this. When she came to the coffee shop, she was like Granny Lou entering the Grandview Garden. Her eyes were not enough, and she jumped around to explore the beauty of the new coffee shop. The little girl was like a lark, and her sweet laughter was heard. Really? Dad can't go now. Come over and tell Mom and Dad. After Yang Yi finished speaking, he looked at Murphy, who was sitting in the booth in front of the bar, and smiled. He brought a glass of milk to Murphy. They had their own exclusive booth behind the bar, which was very hidden. It was covered by bookshelves and partitions, as well as tender green vines and leaves. There was only one entrance that could allow one person to pass through. Originally, the top was transparent, but it blocked the view of others, so it did not make people feel that it was breathless. Yang Yi still preferred the environment of the coffee shop. In addition, next semester he might go to Jiangchuan to attend a class on composition, so he would spend a lot of time in Jiangchuan. By the way, he could take Murphy out to relax. Sitting in their exclusive big booth, from the door, most people would not notice that there was someone there, and it provided Yang Yi and the others with a private space. It was the old man Hu Songnan, the original owner of the small building, who arranged for him to attend the class. Although the old man had retired for many years, he was, after all, an old professor of the Academy of Classical Music. He had some connections. Yang Yi went to attend some classes, and it was not improper for him to get a degree, so it was very easy to solve. Of course, there were no customers in the coffee shop now, and Murphy did not sit inside. After all, the view was not wide enough. At this moment, the little girl ran over happily with a smile on her face and said, "Oh, why don't you go and see? It's really beautiful." She did not wait for others to respond to her complaint, and she could not wait to continue. "Papa, Mom, let me tell you, at first I thought it was a real bird, and I was afraid that it would fly away." Yang Yi looked at her waving her little hands like a bird flapping its wings. He could not help laughing and said, "Then what are you going to do? Are you going to go up and catch it?" "No, I don't dare to catch it. I'm afraid that it will bite me." The little girl quickly waved her hands and explained with a pout, "But it's not real. Later I found out that it was on the wall. Haha." As Cece said this, she even started to laugh. "Then what do you think this bird looks like? Why do you think it's beautiful?" Murphy said. However, Cece shook her head and said with conviction, "No, Mama, the beautiful bird I'm talking about isn't this one. It's that one, a very small one." "Then it's not scary." Yang Yi and Murphy were almost confused by her. "Then tell me about the one you think is beautiful. For example, what does it look like? What color are its feathers? And what are its characteristics?" Murphy guided Shishi to describe it in her own words. This was a challenge for Shishi. The little girl's eyebrows drooped, and she lowered her head for a while. She was a little troubled, but after a while her eyes lit up, and she looked up and said excitedly, "Mom, it's really beautiful. It's round like this, and then like a ball, and then, I don't know what color it is, it's like a table." Shishi still did not know enough vocabulary. "A table is also brown," Yang Yi reminded her. Okay, it's brown." Shishi remembered that her father had told her this word before, and it left a deeper impression on her. "Mom, why don't you come with me to see it? You'll know when you see it." Shishi held Murphy's hand and said coquettishly. After all, it was too difficult to describe it. Seeing it once was better than hearing about it 100 times. Murphy had to stand up and follow the enthusiastic Shishi to see it. Yang Yi also followed them to take a look. Shishi thought the bird was the most beautiful, but it was not the most beautiful. It was a brown-headed crow with brown feathers. A bird with a pure color could not be considered the most beautiful, but it was indeed the most adorable. It had a small round head and no neck, and its small body was round, rounder than a sparrow's. It looked like a small meatball. With such a small figure, a small mouth and dark brown round eyes, it was simply a cute thing, cuter than an angry bird. No wonder Shishi liked it. Shishi continued to show her mother around the coffee shop, and Yang Yi welcomed his guests. Guizi was the first to arrive. Although he had gone home for a few days after filming, he also came back to school as it was close to the start of school. It's prettier than before, but compared with before, it feels like something is missing. Guizi walked around and greeted Murphy and Shishi. Then he slipped back to the bar counter and said to Yang Yi, "What's missing?" Yang Yi poured him a cup of coffee and asked with a smile. "People. Sister Ding Xiang was there before," Guizi said. Chapter 566. Ding Xiang and Yang Huan were still in Beijing. It was said that after Yang Huan played a few extra roles, she finally got a chance to play a small role. She was the maid of the main character in a period drama. She appeared in 2 episodes, but in the end, the maid was killed by an arrow in order to protect her master. After filming this small role, they would only be able to return when school was about to start. Hence, they would not be able to make it in time for the reopening of the coffee shop. Because of this, Yang Yi rolled up his sleeves and returned to the bar to cook. Wasn't I the only one in the coffee shop in the early days? Where was Ding Xiang then? Yang Yi looked at Guozi with disdain and said, "If Huan Huan was here, she would definitely say that you didn't miss Ding Xiang, but the cake she made. Hee, it's all the same." Guozi was not embarrassed. Instead, he laughed proudly. Yang Yi and Guozi talked and laughed as if they had really returned to a year ago. At that time, he did not have any special identity, and Guozi did not reveal his background. Their friendship was like that. They talked without thinking and joked casually. Of course, Yang Yi's inexplicable feelings were not because of Guozi. Other than growing taller, the fatty did not change much. He was not afraid of power. Whether he knew Yang Yi's identity or not, it would not affect his attitude towards Yang Yi. But it was different for others. Like Wang Chao and Zhu Liang. After Yang Yi became a big star, they did not dare to talk dirty in front of Yang Yi like they did in the bar. "Oh yes, Brother Yang, has Sister Huan's admission notice been sent back?" Guozi asked with concern. Yang Huan's college entrance examination results were out at the beginning of the month. They were not high or low, but she easily passed the cultural test. Hence, the admission notice from Media University of Jiangqing had been sent back early. However, Yang Huan was careless. When the results were out, she changed the mailing address to her home address and sent the admission notice directly to Wadaiku village. Hence, she had to trouble Yangqing to send it back. Note 1. Yes, we can't make any mistakes. Yang Yi nodded with a smile. Today is the reopening of the cafe. Who came? Guozi asked curiously. Why am I the only one here? It's still the same people. Xiao Du, Wang Chao, Xiao Zhu, and Xiao Lin's girlfriend will come over as well. As for why no one came, it's because I told them to come over in the afternoon. They happened to hear that you were in school, so they asked you to come over in the morning. Yang Yi smiled. Guozi knocked his head on the bar counter and cried out in grievance. My big brother, I thought you were going to do some big ceremony, so I didn't even get enough sleep. I woke up early in the morning to wash my face, brush my teeth, and do my hair. In the end, I was the only one here the whole morning. There's also Shishi and Murphy. Yang Yi smiled. Although he also took care of Du Yuanlei and the others' day and night work, in Yang Yi's heart, even if they were friends, he still needed to treat them differently. Murphy and Shishi were pushing open the door to look at the flower beds outside. When they heard this, Murphy turned around and smiled at Yang Yi. The warm sunlight fell on the tips of her hair, spreading a golden and red glow. I think we should bring Steamed Bun over to play. Steamed Bun likes the flowers here. Shishi was still talking to her mother. Her voice as pleasant as the wind chimes at the door. If he comes over, he might ruin the flowers. The puppy doesn't know what's important. The door closed, and the cafe fell silent again. Guozi could only chat casually with Yang Yi. Where did Lin Muan go? I heard that he's still participating in Xiangnan Station's talent show called Moving Youth. Yes, previously it was the audition, but there was a gap in between. The finals will be held this month. Ranjin told me that he made it to the top 8. Oh right, this weekend is the final battle. It will be broadcasted live. The top 8 will compete for the national championship. I hope little Lin can realize his dream. Yang Yi was still happy for Lin Mu, and to get such a result. But I don't think it's appropriate. Xiangnan Station is an enemy station. Isn't Tang Kaitai's father the leader of Xiangnan Station? Why would Lin Mu and go to other people's territory? Guozi frowned and said. Even if it's Xiangnan Station, they wouldn't go so far as to pull strings behind the scenes for such a big program. Plus, little Lin and Tang Kaitai don't know each other. Who would target him for no reason? Of course, it can't be said that there are no shady scenes. No matter what, it's already very good that he made it to the top 8. If he really lost the championship because he was targeted, then it doesn't matter. Yang Yi said calmly. In this finals, including this audition, Lin Muan finally didn't stubbornly sing Cantonese songs all the time. Instead, Cantonese songs became his trump card. He would take them out from time to time as a surprise weapon, allowing him to surpass all the difficulties and make it to the top 8. This was related to Lin Mu, and calming down in the cafe, playing music for the customers, singing for the customers, and these self-cultivation exercises. In a newspaper, when Lin Muan was interviewed by a reporter, he talked about his experience. He said that working in a coffee shop made his voice purer and more moving, and that the occasional guidance of a good teacher also greatly improved his singing skills. In order to avoid bringing trouble to Yang-yi, Lin Mu and didn't tell the reporter which cafe he worked in. Of course, Yang-yi didn't read this newspaper. With Lin Mu An's dull personality, he wouldn't use this newspaper to ask for credit from Yang-yi. Listening to Yang-yi's words, Guozi shrugged his shoulders and smiled. Then I wish him good luck. Although I'm not optimistic about his future in Xiangnan Station, I think he doesn't need to participate in those talent shows at all. Learn singing from Big Brother Yang, or sign under your company. No matter what, it's better than running into a wall everywhere. Guozi's words weren't unreasonable, because those talent shows were basically for some record companies to select talents. Some record companies cooperated with TV stations. Not only did they pay, but they also sent big-name stars as judges. The TV stations earned the ratings and advertising fees of the show, and the record companies could directly sign those excellent singers. Moreover, these excellent singers didn't need to be promoted by them. They already had a certain degree of fame through the talent show. This was a win-win model, and a semi-open secret. Everyone has their own aspirations. It's fate that we met. As for the future, who can say for sure? Yang-yi didn't take these too seriously. He said calmly, just like you're now an artist under Huai Brothers, but if you want to go solo in the future, whether you go to another film company to have more resources, or open your own studio like Murphy and I won't stop you. No, when did I want to go? Guozi quickly waved his hand and said, I'm fighting for Big Brother Yang. Didn't you invite Lin Mu and back to train him? You've misunderstood my original intention. Yang-yi froze for a moment and laughed. First of all, I invited little Lin to the coffee shop because I really think he's a good singer and a person with dreams. When he was chasing his dreams, he encountered setbacks. It just so happens that our coffee shop also needs such an amateur musician to play for everyone, so I decided to help him and let him have the courage to continue chasing his dreams. As for how he will go in the future and how he will chase his dreams, it will all depend on his own efforts. It's the same for you. I'll cheer for you and shout for you, but I won't help you succeed and help you become the best actor. Everything depends on your own efforts. Yang-yi looked at Guozi and said. Guozi smiled proudly and said, Of course, if I need you to train me to become the best actor, what's the point of fulfilling my dream? There's no sense of accomplishment at all. While this little fatty still has his own little tsundere. Chapter 567. That's the logic. So the second point that I want to talk about is the original intention of the Huai Brothers Company. It definitely doesn't want to be like Tianmei, a management company that only pursues profits. If that's the case, I might as well not start this company and just run a small studio with Murphy. It's enough for us to do our own work. Yang-yi continued. The reason it was set up is to provide a platform for my brother and sister to not worry about being cheated. I'm not willing to sign with just anyone. Yang-yi purposely glanced at Guozi and said seriously, Don't bring anyone into the company, our company doesn't welcome outsiders. Yang-yi was obviously referring to Geng Sha. When they were shooting the movie, Guozi was still excitedly telling Geng Sha about the management company he signed with. Luckily, Yang-yi stopped him in time. Of course, Geng Sha also signed with a film company with a good reputation in the industry. Grandfather Jiang Lei saw that he had no one to rely on and recommended him. Guozi embarrassedly stuck out his tongue and said, Okay, I got it. That's the logic. I don't want the Huai brothers to become a time bomb that affects our relationship, so don't expect the company to bring you a lot of resources. If you want to go to another company, I definitely won't stop you. Yang-yi said seriously to Guozi. He placed great importance on this, because the money a small management company made was nothing in his eyes. Now that Facebook's domestic project was ready to be sold to SNS offered a high price of 500 million, but Yang-yi wasn't satisfied. He still asked the negotiation team to continue negotiating with SNS. He felt that even if they were to sell, Facebook, which was so popular, should be sold for 800 million. Although it was only the domestic part, in Yang-yi's mind, Facebook had the potential to be worth at least 3 billion according to Renren's market value in his previous life. Of course, SNS wasn't stupid enough to spend $3 billion on a project that hadn't even been tested by the stock market. If it wasn't for Friendship Farm's popularity on Facebook, they would have spent at most $200 to $300 million. If it could be sold for $800 million, Yang Yi would be satisfied. Moreover, with this $800 million, he would have enough money to make plans for Shishi's amusement park in advance, such as buying a few pieces of land first. Looking at the price of the land, it was definitely more cost-effective than keeping Facebook and waiting for it to reach $3 billion before selling it, not to mention that it might not be possible to do so. As for how to buy the land, Yang Yi had already thought of it. He wanted to work with Lance Haokai. Lance Haokai was a real estate tycoon. Not to mention how much Facebook could sell for. Just look at Sahara Online Mall, which currently occupied half of the online shopping market. 2 months ago, Lance Haokai went to Yangcheng to discuss the second round of financing with Fu Jun. The 6% shares of the second round cost Lance Haokai $400 million. This far exceeded Yang Yi and Fu Jun's initial expectations. At first, they only wanted to buy the entire 15% shares for $400 million. Who knew that during the second round of financing, Sahara Online Mall's market value was estimated to be $5 billion. Although it was indeed a little overestimated at that time, anyone could see that its potential was not just that. The reason why Sahara Online Mall could grow from $200 to $300 million to where it was now was because Yang Yi had pointed out the right development path for Sahara Online Mall from the start. That was how Sahara Online Mall avoided bumps and bruises. With the expansion of the logistics coverage, more people would use the more convenient Sahara Online shopping mall. Its market value would naturally rise. Of course, Lance Haokai was also willing to fork out $400 million. Because 2 months later, Sahara Online Mall was no longer only worth $5 billion. Because of the launch of Sahara Online Mall's mobile app, it entered the mobile market that hadn't been taken seriously yet. Now Sahara Online Mall was believed to be able to reach $7 to $8 billion in market value as long as it was listed. In other words, ideally Yang Yi would be able to get to $5 billion if he sold his 34% shares at this time. If it weren't for the fact that Yang Yi hid too deeply and the company was not listed, the media would have been amazed that Yang Yi was also a tycoon. Because of this, Yang Yi was too rich. He didn't care about the wealth that a small brokerage company could create for him. What's more, could money be compared with friendship and feelings? Yang Yi was only making money to build an amusement park for his daughter. Otherwise, why would he spend so much effort to mess with these technology companies? Therefore, if Hua Yi Brothers' company would affect his relationship with his friends and relatives, Yang Yi wouldn't allow it to exist. Seeing that Yang Yi was so serious, Guizi spread his hands helplessly and said, "Okay, Brother Yang, I understand what you mean, but I don't want to leave now." Yang Yi and Guizi were discussing Lin Muan here. They didn't know that this taciturn big boy was brewing a big event. Microbroadcasting's reposting of the lucky draw was very efficient. 2 days later, the list of 30 fans had been verified by Jiangqing's notary office. Mo Xiaowan also worked very hard to organize this event, because this was the first big project since the establishment of Phoebe Studio. And Mo Xiaowan, who wanted to show off to the people of Tianmei, of course had to plan carefully. Mo Fei was the same as Mo Xiaowan. She also participated in this event with great interest. Even the invitation letter she sent out was very unique, just like the invitation letter of the mobile phone conference in Chu Yunqing's previous life. It was a delicate small box containing a platinum album signed by Murphy and a palm-sized key that represented passage. Of course, rather than calling it a key, it was better to call it a handicraft, because it was designed by Yang Yi himself. The symmetrical tooth patterns on both sides, combined with the shape of the handle, looked exactly like the word Fei in Murphy's Chinese character. The platinum album wasn't expensive and the key was very cheap, but the signature on the album and the meaning of this key definitely made the entire invitation letter a hot steamed bun in the fan circle. Even though Phoebe Studios' official Weibo had promised to make this key into a peripheral for sale, the value of this first batch of keys couldn't be matched by the later ones. For some of the fanatical fans, the 30 fans who received the invitation could not wait to post the photos they took on Weibo. This caused many fans to be envious, jealous, and hateful. But there was nothing they could do. Who asked these 30 fans to be so lucky? The fan meeting hadn't even started yet, but there were already people who couldn't wait for Murphy to announce the second fan meeting. According to the plan, the 30 lucky fans would come to Jiangqing next weekend. Of course, they would have to pay for their own travel expenses. And they needed to have a pass, which was a key, to enter Phoebe Studios' office building. Murphy would take them to visit her and Yang Yi's studio, and then start the performance of the fan meeting in a specially decorated activity hall. Although there was still a week to go, Murphy was already in a state of excitement. Not only did she prepare the song she was going to perform, but she also thought about what topics to talk about with her fans. This was a good thing. As long as she wasn't too tired, Yang Yi felt that it was worth it to see Murphy's smile and confidence. Murphy really treated this as a concert. She couldn't sit still at home on Friday, and wanted to go to the company to learn about the equipment layout of the activity hall with Mo Xiaowan and Xiao AI. After Yang Yi drove Murphy to the company, he took Shishi to kindergarten. Today was also the registration day of the new semester of Springfield Kindergarten. Shishi was going to be a little girl in the senior class. Chapter 568. Today, Springfield Kindergarten was more lively than usual. In addition to parents like Yang Yi who brought their children to sign up for the new semester, there were many other parents and children gathered downstairs to listen to the teachers introduce Springfield Kindergarten's teaching model, teaching characteristics, advantages over other kindergartens, and so on. In fact, when Yang Yi and Murphy chose a school for Shishi last year, they were like these parents, holding flyers and squeezing into the crowd. However, most of the new parents signed their children up for the New Year's small class. When Yang Yi came, he directly signed Shishi up for the middle class. Shishi. Just as they were about to go upstairs, a small head popped out with a happy smile. Yang Yi and Shishi looked up at the same time. It was Yang Luoqi. The little girl was wearing a big flower today, looking delicate and wild, which was quite interesting. Hee. Chichi, you're here too. Shishi ran up happily. Her two thin lips were smiling, her bright eyes were smiling, and her curved eyebrows were showing her joy. Shishi was looking around just now, looking for familiar faces. During the long 2-month holiday, although she had a lot of fun and occasionally saw her friends, Shishi still missed them. However, she saw Wang Shijuan, Wang Xiyun and their mother. The brother and sister had finished signing up and were about to leave, so they didn't have much interaction with Shishi. The two young ladies gathered together. Their angelic smiles almost filled the corridor with sunlight that couldn't be refracted in the corridor. Yang Yi and Yang Gua, who was waiting in line to sign up, chatted for a while. The topics between adults were relatively boring and not worth mentioning. After being happy for a while, Yang Luoqi suddenly thought of something. She pulled Shishi's hand and whispered, "Shishi, I want to tell you something." "Go ahead." When Shishi spoke, the corners of her mouth were still curved, drawing a beautiful arc like a quiet crescent moon. "My father and I saw a foreigner just now." When Yang Luoqi said this, her small body shrank as if she wanted to hide behind Shishi. "Foreigners?" Shishi blinked her big eyes in confusion, unable to react. "It's so strange. Her hair is different," Yang Luoqi whispered. "Then my father talked to her father." Yang Yi also heard what the young lady said. He was a little surprised and asked Yang Gua, "Isn't there only a senior class on this floor? Why are there foreigners here?" "There is a transfer student today. She is a little girl from Sweden. Her father is an executive of Wall Motors. She was transferred to China this year," Yang Gua said to Yang Yi. Almost all adults in Sweden could speak English, and Yang Gua was an English professor, so it was not a problem for him to talk to foreigners. He probably talked to the other party just now. However, what were foreigners like? Yang Luoqi's description was not clear, and Shishi was confused. But soon, she saw it with her own eyes. After a while, a tall middle-aged man opened the door and walked out. Yang Yi was familiar with Sweden. In his previous life, he caused a lot of trouble in Stockholm. The other party was a typical Swedish. He had blonde hair, blue eyes and fair skin. Even his eyebrows were golden. However, perhaps because he was thinking too much, his hairline was high, and his forehead was a little bald. Behind him was a gentle and shy little girl. Although she looked a little silly, she was very tall. She was more than 2 meters tall. She was already taller than her peers. Even Chen Shiryan was a little shorter than her. However, compared to this little Swedish girl, she was shorter. Yang Yi estimated that this little Swedish girl was almost 3 meters tall. When she saw the Swedish man and the little girl, Yang Luoqi looked as if she had seen a monster. She shrank behind Shi and couldn't help but whisper to Shi, look, her hair is different. It's weird. Shi blinked. She also looked at the foreign girl curiously. The foreign girl was embarrassed and hid behind her father's thigh. Yang, it's your turn. The middle-aged Swedish man smiled at Yang Yi and Yang Guo in a friendly manner, then said to Yang Guo. It seemed that he liked people like Yang Guo, who could speak English fluently, to communicate with him. Thank you, David. Is everything going well? Yang Guo asked in English. Yes, I registered Lu Weisha. I hope she can learn to speak Chinese in China. David patted his daughter's shoulder a little dotingly. The tall little girl hugged her father's waist. She seemed to have grown so tall in vain. She was not as unbridled as Chen Shiyun. Instead, she was very shy. This will be a big challenge. Yang Guo sighed. Chinese is not easy to learn. Yes, the teacher said so just now. She was also worried about Lu Weisha's communication. After all, Lu Weisha's English is not particularly good. David said. While David and Yang Guo were chatting, Shi and Yang Luoqi also hid at the side. They looked at Lu Weisha, the foreign child, and whispered to each other. It's not weird. The hair of foreigners is different. It's not black. Shi said to Yang Luoqi. The little girl had a good memory. She also told Yang Luoqi about her experience. There are black people in my grandfather's house. The black uncle is very black, and his hair is a little bit curly. Hee. As she spoke, Cece was so happy that she started laughing. Curly? Yang Luoqi was a little surprised. It was difficult for her to picture such a scene in her mind. However, her curiosity had overcome her fear. On the other side, Yang Guo frowned. Then what should we do? How can she communicate with the children and teachers? It's okay. David smiled optimistically. Children's language ability is very strong. In the past, there were education experts who gathered children from different countries together. Through proper guidance and training, they could learn many languages through communication. I also believe that Lu Weisha can face such a challenge by herself and overcome it. Right? Lu Weisha. David patted Lu Weisha's little head. However, the little girl was a little depressed. She raised her head and looked at her father with her blue eyes. She whispered, Dad, I want to go home. She was speaking in Swedish. Yang Yi felt an inexplicable sense of familiarity. He knew a little Swedish. After all, he had carried out missions in Stockholm, Malmö, Göteborg and other cities. Of course, his Swedish was limited. It was only limited to simple daily conversations, not to mention complicated writing. You can try Lu Weisha. Yang Yi was a little itchy. He couldn't help but say, Here you can make some friends. For example, my daughter Shi. You can be friends with her. When he said that, not only was David and Lu Weisha shocked, even Yang Yi looked at Yang Yi in surprise. Yang Guo didn't understand Swedish, but he was a language expert. He could tell that Yang Yi and the little girl spoke at the same pitch and speed. He could tell that they were speaking the same language. As for which language, was there a need to ask? Yang Yi could speak Swedish. Yang Guo didn't even know that Yang Yi could speak English. In the end, Yang Yi could speak Swedish. How could Yang Guo not be surprised? However, he was only surprised. He didn't know as much about Yang Yi as Murphy did. Naturally, he wouldn't suspect anything. It had to be said that this familiar language gave David and the little girl named Lu Weisha a very warm feeling. She even forgot to complain to her father and pestered him to go home. Oh, you can speak Swedish? Sorry, I shouldn't have questioned you. I was just too surprised. David said happily in Swedish. Just a little. I think it's better to speak in English. Because you speak too fast, I can't understand. Yang Yi smiled. Chapter 569. Cece's reaction to her name was still quite sensitive. When her father read out the two words Cece, just now Cece, who was excitedly telling her friends about the black man and the red-haired person she had seen before, suddenly stopped. She turned her head to look at her father, and blinked her eyes in confusion. Young Luochi was also listening to Shishi's story attentively. At this moment, she came back to her senses and looked at her father with Shishi. Shishi, what is your father saying? Young Luochi didn't understand. I don't know either. My papa, what is my papa talking about? I don't understand. Shishi doubted if she had heard it wrong. The two girls were whispering, but the adults were chatting happily. Because they were speaking in English, Yonghua also joined in. They laughed, and then turned to look for their daughters. Shishi, come here. Young Luochi was called over by Yonghua, and Shishi was also called over by her father. Yongyi smiled and introduced his daughter to the little Swedish girl opposite him. No, it should be called a big sister, because Lu Weisha was older than Shishi. She was 2 months away from 6 years old. However, David's idea was different from the people in China. He didn't want his children to start primary education too early. They should go to school when they were older. That would be helpful for their children's growth. Maybe this is Lu Weisha. She and her father are from Sweden. Well, they are foreigners. She doesn't speak Chinese, and her English is not very good. Shishi and the Swedish girl looked at each other as their father introduced them. The eyes of the two little girls were also filled with curiosity. Cece felt that the other girls' blue eyes were very beautiful, just like glass pearls. Lu Weisha, on the other hand, was slightly nervous. She hid behind her father's legs, but she was also sizing up Cece. It was unknown if she was wondering why this black-haired girl's hair was so long. I don't want to. I'm scared. Young Luochi's soft voice came from the side. Yongyi turned his head and saw Yonggua's helpless and somewhat embarrassed expression. It seemed that young Luochi was still afraid. This was the first time she had met someone whose hair and eyes were different from hers. Her first thought was to escape. Of course, it was also because young Luochi was a little timid. If it were Chen Shuryan, that little girl, she would probably surround Lu Weisha and look at her curiously, making her feel embarrassed. Everyone's attention was attracted. Lu Weisha saw another beautiful girl fidgeting. Although she couldn't understand Chinese, young Luochi's resistance made her vaguely understand that the other party couldn't accept her. Lu Weisha couldn't tell what she was feeling at the moment, but her eyes were filled with disappointment. Fortunately, there's still Shishi. Yongyi was afraid that Yonghua would feel awkward, so he gently patted his daughter's butt and smiled. Go and say hi to Lu Weisha. Lovisa. Hedge. The first syllable was the fourth syllable, and the second syllable was very short. It meant hello in Swedish. Of course, if the pronunciation wasn't accurate, it might sound like a foreigner saying mud howl. However, it wasn't hard to learn. Under everyone's gaze, Shishi was a little hesitant. She didn't know if it was because the other party was a stranger, or because she didn't know what her father was talking about. She leaned on her father's knee and turned to look at him. She saw her father's encouraging gaze, and heard her father repeat. The little girl finally mustered her courage, and waved her hand at the blonde girl. She softly imitated her father. Hedge. Lovisa. After that, Shishi turned to look at her father. She didn't know if she said anything wrong. Yongyi gave her a thumbs up. Actually, his pronunciation wasn't very accurate. He didn't pronounce the girl's name accurately, but the flaws couldn't obscure the beauty. Shishi greeted the foreign child. Yongyi was happy. However, he didn't know that in Shishi's eyes, in the eyes of the little girl who had seen so many different people before, she didn't have any nationality. Lu Weisha was a stranger who was taller than her. That was all. She treated Lu Weisha the same way she treated Chen Shuryan a year ago. There was no difference. They were still strangers and didn't have any friendship. There was only the same curiosity. However, the current Shishi was different from the Shishi a year ago. She was a lot bolder and didn't hide from the crowd like before. Lu Weisha looked at Cece and felt the other party's kindness. Perhaps it was because she had heard the first words that she could understand between people of the same age, so she couldn't help but reveal a smile when she poked her head out. You have to respond to her too. She said hello to you. Respond to her. She's called Cece. David encouraged Lu Weisha. Lu Weisha wasn't as timid as she appeared. Perhaps it was because of the different environment. She didn't like this place and wanted to go back. However, the situation seemed to have changed. It was as if the sun had peeked out from behind the clouds after the rain. This humid world had a brand new look. The mountains and fields stretched as far as the eye could see. It made people feel relaxed and happy. The tall little sister, Lu Weisha, shyly raised her left hand and greeted Shishi. Then she said in her own language, Hedge. See. Lu Weisha's pronunciation was also strange, but the two girls looked at each other and smiled. Shishi felt that it was fun to communicate with friends who didn't speak the same language, and Lu Weisha felt that she had a new friend from China. She was happy. Looking at their smiles, they were so beautiful that the flowers on the balcony lost their color. David was very busy. After a simple exchange, he left with his daughter. Yang Yi and Yang Guo also quickly signed up their daughters. At this time, in a hotel room near Xiangnan TV station, a man was holding a stack of things and talking to Lin Muan. Sign it and we'll guarantee that you'll enter the top 4. We'll fully support you. Getting first place won't be a problem. The man persuaded Lin Muan earnestly. You're a seedling with a lot of potential. We all know that your falsetto singing is very good. You should be called the best in the top 8. But you should also understand the rules. We, Mingsu Records, have invested a lot to support such a talent show. It's impossible for us to make a wedding dress for others. If you don't sign it, sorry, you can only stay in the top 8. People will only remember the person who made it to the end. I don't know you well enough now. I signed a long-term contract, so I can't take the risk. Lin Muan shook his head. Did you sign Rong Huada or Junkie? The man's face changed. How can they be better than us? In terms of qualifications, the man tried his best to belittle the other 2 competitors who also sponsored this year's youth song competition. At the same time, he kept bragging about the strength of his own record company. Lin Muan still shook his head. He lowered his head so the other party couldn't see his eyes. He just whispered, I'm here to sing, not to sign a contract with a record company. The man's face stiffened, and he said resentfully, You're too naive. In the entertainment industry, you don't have a company to back you up. Do you really think you can go on? Or do you think that others will not sign a contract like you, and then be lucky enough to fish in troubled waters? The man chuckled and said, Then you really overestimate your competitors. We've already signed Enlay from the East China division, and the other 2 companies have probably gained a lot. Now you're the only one who hasn't been signed yet. I think you have more potential than Enlay, so if you sign a contract, the company will give you all the resources and support you to become the champion. The man still wanted to persuade Lin Muan, but his mouth was dry, and Lin Muan was still unmoved. Sorry. Lin Muan raised his head, and his eyes showed a sincere apology. I'll think about it, but not now. If not now, then it'll be too late. Do you think this promise of ours is permanent? Do you think we can drag it out until you get on the stage and win the championship? Let me tell you, Xiao Lin, I've been optimistic about you since the regional competition, but if you still don't want to sign a contract, I can only apologize to you for this competition. The man still threw out harsh words. He waved his hand angrily and said, I'll give you half a day to think about it. Before dinner tonight, give me a call. Otherwise, I'm sorry, even if you want to sign our contract, there's no more possibility. The man left angrily. I'm sorry. Lin Muan sighed softly, but he didn't feel too regretful. Although the other party seemed to cherish talent, he had seen the 7-year contract, and there were too many traps in it. In the coffee shop, he often communicated with Qianli Kawanki, talking about music and their situation. From that, he knew many of the contract traps that new singers often encountered. After some time, Lin Muan's phone on the table lit up. He picked it up and glanced at it. The caller ID showed Rong Huada's manager, and a string of numbers. Lin Muan didn't hesitate and pressed it. Then Lin Muan gently put down the phone. This phone was bought for him by his girlfriend, and Lin Muan couldn't bear to break it. Tomorrow's stage he had to prepare well. This was a live broadcast. There was no hope of winning the championship or even the top 4, but at least he had a chance to sing on the big stage. Chapter 570. On Saturday night, the coffee shop at the corner of the street was bathed in warm yellow light, revealing a warm glow. Phew! Guazzi carried a box of beer, and 2 large bottles of orange juice on top of it. He panted as he carried it over. He bought it during the day and told Yang Yi that it was meaningless to drink coffee in such a lively scene. Ranjin was just about to get up and help, but Wang Chao ran up and said, "Little fatty, you asked me to help you. Look at how tired you are." The two put the beer box on the ground together, and then Guazzi took 2 breaths, showed his white teeth and laughed. He gestured with his hands and asked, "Who wants beer? Who wants drinks?" Suddenly, everyone laughed. Wang Chao, Zhu Liyang, and the others waved their hands and shouted, "I want beer." "I want a beer too," Mo Shaoan said with a bright smile. She was actually very busy. Although Murphy and Yang Yi did not have much schedule, she was managing the studio and dozens of people in the company. She also had to prepare for Murphy's fan meeting and the new song, to be released next month, which was the song that she had sung with Yang Yi before but had not released. Therefore, Mo Shaoan, who rarely gave herself a day off, boldly wanted to drink tonight and tomorrow. "Okay. Guests, please wait a moment." Guazzi was still acting like a waiter. He grabbed a towel and slung it over his shoulder. Then he bent down and picked up a few bottles of beer. He eagerly handed them over, making everyone laugh. Guazzi was really a happy person. With him, Yang Yi did not have to worry that the atmosphere would become very depressing because he was not good at finding topics to talk about. However, in addition to Guazzi, there was another happy person here. She sat with her mom. She waved her hand as if she was very resistant and said, "Uncle Gua, I don't want to drink. I don't want to drink, and my papa and mom don't drink either. This is beer. It doesn't taste too much like a drink. It's very delicious." Guazzi teased her. Unexpectedly, the little girl pouted and said, "Uncle Gua, you are lying to a child. I know that a ball is a ball, and then I know that beer is also wine. I heard you say that it is wine." Everyone was confused by the little girl, and then came to their senses. Then, including Guazzi, they could not help but laugh. Murphy could not help but smile, and then patted her daughter's little head intimately. The coffee shop was soaked in happy laughter. When Yang Yi came back from the phone call, he was still a little confused. Wang Chao couldn't wait to tell him what had happened just now, but he didn't say it accurately. Guazzi pulled him away in disgust and repeated Cece's words personally. "That's right." She pouted. She felt that everyone did not take her important discovery seriously, so she said unhappily, "Daughter, there's nothing wrong with you. You gave a good example." Yang Yi laughed and gave Shishi a thumbs up. Only then did Shishi giggle with her father in satisfaction. "Why did Director Chen look for you just now?" In the middle of the coffee shop, the big LCD TV was playing a long advertisement. Before the game started, Murphy asked Yang Yi. "He asked me to write the theme song for Soldier's Assault," Yang Yi said. "Did you agree?" Murphy took a sip of the orange juice that Guazzi poured for her. The sour taste was very good, and it was very suitable for Murphy's current taste. She then gestured to Cece, asking her to drink some too. "I didn't want to agree," Yang Yi said. He had never watched the TV series Soldier's Assault before, so he had no idea what theme song to write for it. As for We Want to Be a Soldier, To Be Honest, and Green Flower in the Army, which he had yet to take out, these classic songs were not suitable for Soldier's Assault. The reason was simple. We Became Soldiers was too high-pitched at the beginning, and it did not fit the plot of Soldier's Assault. As for Green Flower in the Army, and To Be Honest, one of the lyrics had Mother, don't worry, and the other had Mother at home is already full of white hair. The mother of the main character, Su Sanduo, had passed away very early, so the lyrics did not fit the plot. Therefore, he subconsciously wanted to refuse, but just as he was about to say it, he suddenly remembered that he had read an introduction about the soundtrack of a movie that he liked. It seemed that the soundtrack of that movie had been used by Soldier's Assault. Of course, the theme song of Pirates of the Caribbean had also been used by Soldier's Assault, But Yang Yi felt that he would still need this song in the future, so he did not think about it. What happened after that? Asked Murphy. After that, a very grand melody suddenly appeared in my head, but it was just a blurry shadow. It was a very complicated melody, a bit like a symphony. I think it would be a good challenge if I could write it down. Yang Yi smiled and said to Murphy. It was indeed a big challenge, because the song was not simple at all. He had only heard it before, both the original version and the symphony orchestra version, so it was easy for him to find it in his memory. However, he had never looked at the score. It was not as easy to find the score as a pop music accompaniment. However, Yang Yi had been reading composition books for a while, so he had some foundation in classical music composition. Then he was going to take the opportunity to study at a classical music school and ask some real masters for advice. He did not believe that he could not find the complete song. This was a big challenge, but Yang Yi was going to face it head-on. He was going to bring back a masterpiece from his previous life and shock this world. Every cell in his body was filled with joy and excitement. I can't wait to hear your final result. Murphy was also someone who loved music. She could not help but move her body, feeling happy for Yang Yi. It's starting, it's starting. Guozi and Wang Chao shouted, diverting Yang Yi and Murphy's attention to the television. The opening of Youth by the Song was very exciting and cool. With the host leading the way, the contestants came out from the backstage arch one by one in the midst of the fireworks on the stage. 8 handsome boys, who were dressed up by makeup artists, hairstylists, and costume designers, stood on the stage, causing waves of screams from the fangirls in the audience. They waved the light sticks and support signs in their hands with all their might. Even Lin Muan had people supporting him, but it was unknown whether they were real fans or arranged by the show's producers. The camera panned to Lin Muan, who was standing alone on the stage. The host's voice in the background kept introducing Lin Muan, but Lin Muan did not act cool like the other contestants. He was just like how he usually was. Even when Lin Muan sang in the bar before, he was just like how he usually was. Lin Muan, you can do it. Guozi raised his glass. Lin Muan, you can do it, little Lin. Yang Yi and the others also raised their glasses with smiles. Even Shishi waved her little fist and joined in. They had gathered together today to silently support Lin Mu, and from behind. Needless to say, after more than 10 minutes, it was time for the first round of 1v1 PK. The competition format was like this. After singing the first round, 4 contestants would enter the loser's bracket. After that, not only would they have to fight their way out of the loser's bracket, but they would also have to fight their way out of the loser's bracket with the last 2 contestants left in the second round of PK. It was unknown if there was an inside story, but Lei, who was signed by Mingsu Records, became Lin Muan's PK opponent. Before this cruel PK, do you have anything to say to your opponent? The beautifully dressed long-legged female host smiled and handed the microphone to Lin Muan, who was going to sing first, and asked. Lin Muan looked deeply at Lei, and calmly said to the long-legged host, "Let's talk after I finish singing." Of course, Yang Yi and the others sitting in the coffee shop, including Lin Muan's girlfriend, Ran Jin, did not know the story behind this. They soon saw the song Lin Muan was going to sing in the first round. Coffee with sugar? Yang Yi was surprised to see the subtitles of the song. Choosing this song? Is this guy's brain fried? Chapter 571. The reason why Yang Yi was skeptical was because the song Sweet Coffee was not only a Cantonese song, but it was also a Cantonese song with a very low popularity. Almost no one in the mainland had heard of it. Choosing such an unpopular song and language in a cruel talent show competition was simply courting death. But on the TV, the stage had been vacated for Lin Muan. The brisk piano prelude sounded. Lin Mu and stood in front of the microphone stand. His eyes did not look at the camera. He just held the microphone and said softly, "This song is loved by the person I love the most. It is dedicated to the person I love the most." Sitting in front of the TV, Ran Jin, who was closest to him, was pleasantly surprised. She did not expect Lin Mu and to sing this song as soon as he came on stage. Moreover, she did not think as far as Yang Yi. Her heart was filled with happiness. She held up her hands and listened carefully. Yang Yi still felt that something was wrong in his heart because Lin Mu and had not been so stubborn in the previous competition. But why would he do such a thing in the most crucial finals? Although Yang Yi was criticizing him, listening to Lin Mu and sing this song, Yang Yi could not help but secretly praise him. If one did not appreciate it from a utilitarian point of view, Lin Mu and really sang this song well. For this female song, although Lin Mu and did not use a falsetto throughout the whole process, this was also the embodiment of the true and falsetto switch that he was most proud of vividly. Not only was he showing off his skills, but in every paragraph, the delicate emotions hidden in his voice could be heard. It was no longer purely driven by emotions to change the tone, but two parallel. Breathing and changing the tone were all specially deliberated, giving people the feeling that he never breathed. Long paragraphs could still be completed in one go. Because it was easy, he could integrate his emotions into it. Not comparable to a real singer, but just based on the singing of this song, Lin Mu and could indeed be called a singer. After half a year of precipitation, his level had improved a lot with the occasional guidance of Yang Yi and Murphy. Casually order a cup of white coffee, my sorrow in peace. It could be seen that not many people below the stage could understand the song he was singing, but there were still quite a few girls who were intoxicated by his gentleness and affection. After he finished the song, the confused audience still gave him a round of applause. The long-legged female host came up again and praised Lin Muan. Then she asked him what he wanted to talk about with his opponent when he said he wanted to wait until the song was over. The long-legged female host was all smiles, but she was also very bad. Everyone knew that she wanted to cause trouble. But that's not a big deal. In this kind of cruel competition, it's only fun if there's a little gunpowder. Lin Muan took the microphone. He pondered for a moment and said, I've always wanted to sing on the big stage. Today, I finally got my wish. This feeling is so dreamy that I'm a little reluctant to go down. Not only the audience in the stadium, but the audience watching the live broadcast in front of their televisions also laughed happily. Perhaps they all thought that Lin Mu and was preparing to say something ruthless by doing this. For example, the next sentence would be, so I'm going to stand until the end. Sorry. However, Ran Jin, who was sitting in front of the television, was not as optimistic as Guozi and the others who were laughing beside her. She opened her mouth in surprise. Based on her understanding of boyfriends, Lin Mu and was definitely not a person who liked to provoke others. Moreover, Ran Jin saw a look of regret in Lin Muan's eyes. Without waiting for Ran Jin's doubts to form, Lin Muan's gaze became firm and he said, But I want to leave this stage. Yes, I want to withdraw from the singing youth competition. What? Everyone was dumbfounded. Yang Yi was shocked. He was just worried that Lin Mu and would go overboard and not be able to advance to the next round. But now Lin Mu and directly told everyone that he was not going to play. What was he doing? Ran Jin also did not expect Lin Mu and to make such a decision. She sat there in a daze and no one could tell what kind of expression she had. How could this be? I didn't hear it wrong, right? Guozi shouted. The long-legged female host on the television helped him ask this question. The stunned female host subconsciously asked, What? You want to withdraw from the competition? Is that true? Why? A series of questions came at him. However, Lin Mu and was very calm. He nodded and then said, I want to withdraw from the competition because not long ago, I found out that my juniors, the singer group 1000 Miles Chuanshu from Jiangqing Media University, were cheated by Ronghuada's management company. They wanted to obtain 1000 Miles Chuanshu's original songs and even hid my juniors. Lin Mu and was exposing the truth. In front of the television, the media reporters at the scene jumped up as if they had been injected with chicken blood. They desperately looked for paper and pens to record. Those who could not find anything recorded directly with their phones, recording pens and cameras. The director at the scene was also shouting nervously, Cut the advertisement, cut the advertisement. But it was too late. Lin Mu and had already said the rest of his words. Before the competition, I found out that this competition was controlled by Ronghuada's management company. So I decided to, before the last sentence was completely finished, The audience sitting in front of the television could see the camera unnaturally switch to another host. At the same time, the sound of Lin Muen's microphone was also cut off. The male host looked embarrassed, but still said in a very professional manner, "Ahem, let us first enter a short advertisement. More exciting, please don't go away." Regardless of how the host and director at the scene tried to save the situation, Lin Muen calmly handed the microphone back to the long-legged female host. Before leaving, he did not forget to apologetically say to the other party, "I'm sorry to have caused you trouble." The long-legged female host looked at his back and was stunned for a while. She was actually not angry about Lin Muen's withdrawal from the competition. As the female host in charge of Xiangnan TV station, her status was not low. Naturally, she knew what kind of background Ronghuada's management company that Lin Muen angrily criticized. Of course, she would not do anything for Lin Muen, but in her heart, she still secretly felt sorry for this gentle, elegant, and affectionate big boy. What have you done? Have you thought about your own future? A few days later, Yang Yi held a few newspapers and looked at Lin Muen, and sitting in front of him, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. This matter was considered a big deal. Xiangnan TV station did not have that much authority and could not control the national media. So after Lin Muen returned to the hotel, there were still many reporters who interviewed him. Then, from Lin Muen's detailed description, they learned about Qianli Chuanshu's experience. These media reports put Ronghuada at the forefront of the public's attention. Many people criticized Ronghuada and even questioned Xiangnan's court. Why did they give such a strange verdict for such a case? For a moment, Ronghuada was in a terrible fix. Of course, Ronghuada was not at the mercy of others. A large number of public relations articles were frequently published in the newspapers and major websites. Their public relations did not rush to clear their name, but tried to divert the public's attention and put the public's attention on Lin Muen's irresponsible mistake of withdrawing from the competition. Not only did a large number of hired writers write articles on the newspapers and websites criticizing Lin Muen's actions, but there also seemed to be a lot of scolding from the internet, blaming Lin Muen for affecting the normal progress of the competition, and for having no professional ethics. For example, "A bar singer is trash, so reckless he deserves to be a bar singer for life." Of course, Yang Yi was not affected by these public opinions. He was only worried about Lin Muen's future. Being looked at by Yang Yi like this, Lin Muen lowered his head and said softly, "I just want to use the live broadcast as an opportunity to call more people to pay attention to Lu Xiaoshu's situation. Moreover, whether I withdraw from the competition or not, I will still be in the top 8. Lin Muen had never thought of signing with other management companies, so he felt that his results were just like this, and there was nothing to regret. Besides, he had participated in too many singing competitions in the past, so withdrawing from one was not a big deal. "You're stupid," Yang Yi said unhappily. "You dare to make such a scene and make others see you as a powder keg. Which management company in the country will dare to hire you in the future? Which program will dare to invite you on stage? Then, which competitions will you be able to participate in the future? Do you believe that the judges will directly kick you out of the audition because they are afraid that you will make a scene again?" Lin Muen really did not think that far. He looked at Yang Yi in surprise and asked, "Does Ronghuada have that much power? Can it affect the whole country?" Of course it can't affect the whole country, but there are unspoken rules in the entertainment industry. Yang Yi sighed and said, "If you continue to make trouble, I'm afraid you will never have the chance to step into the entertainment industry again, unless you become a superstar." Just like in his previous life, when Singer Sun withdrew from the finals of the singers competition, he was also criticized by many people. Of course, although there were many stories behind the scenes that could not be explained, if Singer Sun was not one of the top male singers in the country, whether it was in terms of singing skills or the influence he had when he was popular, Singer Sun would have gotten himself into trouble. In this world, the power of the TV station was not as great as in Yang Yi's previous life, but the unspoken rules were still there. Lin Muen was afraid that it would be difficult for him in the future. Lin Muen opened his mouth, not knowing what to do. Of course, Yang Yi would not sit back and do nothing. Moreover, although Lin Muan was a little reckless, this mess did give him an inspiration to solve the problem of Qianli Chuanshu and Tang Kaitai, who was always causing trouble for him. If it was the previous Yang Yi, it would be too easy to solve Tang Kaitai's problem. But now his mentality had changed again. Unless it was something really important that was related to his family, Yang Yi would not easily take risks. Therefore, even if Tang Kaitai wanted his book to be removed from the shelves of the major bookstores in Xiangnan, Yang Yi did not angrily go to Xiangnan. Instead, he temporarily put it aside and wanted to use normal methods to outsmart him. Now Lin Mu, and gave him a good inspiration. Yang Yi had already arranged for people to do this while the news was hot. Now he wanted to help Lin Muan. A few days later, Lin Mu, and said goodbye to Ran Jin, and Lu Xiaoshu, Miao Chuan, and the others who rushed back from their hometown to send him off. Yang Yi arranged for him to go to Tianxiang Records to learn from Chen Yijie and Tianxiang's deputy music director, the famous music producer Mao Su. The entertainment industry in Harbor City was more closed, and Lin Mu, and wouldn't be affected there. He would learn for a period of time first, and there might still be room for development. Moreover, he did like to sing Cantonese songs. The music industry in Harbor City was his best starting point. Whether he wanted to come back to China in the future, it would depend on his own wishes. Ran Jin was still a counselor in Jiangqing Media University. But since Lin Muan went to Harbor City, Ran Jin would also study as soon as possible and prepare to go to Harbor City's university to continue working together with Lin Muan. Both of them were from Cantonese province, and there wouldn't be any language problems developing in Harbor City. It was worth mentioning that the Hua Yi brothers did not sign Lin Mu, and because Tianxiang wasn't in the charity industry, they were grooming Lin Mu, and at Yang Yi's request, but Lin Mu, and also needed to create value for them. But Yang Yi had already included Lin Mu, and in his heart, and it didn't matter to the Hua Yi brothers if he wasn't one of them. Before Lin Muan left, Yang Yi patted him on the shoulder and encouraged him. Go there, talk less and listen more. Also be more careful and develop well. I have high hopes for you. Chapter 572. Begging for monthly votes. Life was like a waiting platform. Some people were coming and some were leaving. Yang Yi sent Lin Mu away and picked up his sister. Yang Huan had just returned from the capital with Ding Xiang after filming The Maid. She also had to report to school. Tomorrow was the last day for the freshmen to report to school. Then, they had to gather and all the freshmen were arranged to participate in the military training. She couldn't miss any of the training. In the past, even a celebrity student like Qin Wen didn't dare to find an excuse to skip the military training. Yang Huan was not even a celebrity. Of course, she couldn't ask for leave because she had to film. Ding Xiang, Guo and other senior students started school 2 weeks later. Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan were the same. They were prepared to come to school on the last day of classes. However, Lin Muan helped them. When Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan heard that Lin Mu was going south to Harbor City, they hurried back to send him off. After knowing what happened to Lin Mu, and Yang Huan and Guo reaction was very simple. They both felt relieved. Guo had a great change of opinion of Lin Muan. Yang Huan even shouted, "Brother An is a great hero who upholds justice and gets rid of evil for the people." Yang Yi didn't object. He could only tell Ding Xiang, who still knew a little about the ways of the world, to take care of these two unreliable guys. Yang Yi didn't accompany Yang Huan when she went to report to school. Today was Sunday, which was the time for the fan meeting that Murphy had been looking forward to for a long time. So in the morning he asked Wu Jingjing to take care of Xi and let the little girl stay at the Lan family to play with her friends. Then he went to the studio with Murphy and accompanied her to meet the 30 selected fans. Murphy, Yang Yi. When the fans saw them, they jumped up from their chairs excitedly. Some people even shouted Yang Yi's stage name, Mu Ziang. Among the 30 fans there were both men and women. Some were young girls who chased after their idols, some were women in professional attire, some were big boys with young faces, and some were uncles who looked really old or just looked old. But everyone was the same. They were all diehard fans of Murphy. When Murphy greeted them and asked for their names one by one, they were so excited that they spoke incoherently. Today's fan meeting is mainly divided into 2 big segments and 4 small segments. Xiao AI was today's host. She maintained order and pushed the event forward. The first big part and the first segment was to visit the Phoebe studio. This is our recording studio. It's usually used by Yang Yi and I. The songs you've heard, Glory, To Be Honest, 15th Moon, and so on, were all recorded here. Murphy liked this part very much because she had always been very satisfied with the decoration and layout of the studio. More importantly, in this studio, she experienced the freedom that Tian Mei couldn't give her before. So although her tone was gentle and calm, the happiness and satisfaction in her voice couldn't be concealed. To be honest, there was nothing special about the studio. If there was something special, it was that there were 3 recording studios in this small building. The equipment inside was first class in the industry. A small studio was actually equipped with 3 luxurious recording studios. This could definitely be said to be luxurious. Yang Yi was rich. He left a recording studio for him and Murphy, and then another for Jin Yingming's usual use. The remaining one was just in case. For example, Guozi recorded Fairy Tale by the Hua Yi brothers before. However, a celebrity studio was very fresh for every fan. They visited a celebrity studio for the first time. There was no comparison, so how could they feel it was special? In the small building, the fans' satisfied praises came one after another. These modern decorations had made them feel that Murphy left the agency and opened her own studio successfully. Such a comfortable working environment would definitely inspire more inspiration and bring them more good works. Next, Mo Fei took the fans back to the well-decorated activity hall, and the real fan meeting was about to begin. Yang Yi sat on the side with a guitar in his arms. He just said hello and didn't say much, because this was Murphy's fan meeting. He couldn't overshadow the host. But the fans were very excited. Before they started, they whispered to their new friends. Yang Yi is also going to sing, right? We can just see the couple singing together. Murphy sat on the high stool. Before sitting down, she apologized to the fans. I'm sorry, can I sit down? Maybe I can't stand and sing with everyone like a concert. It's okay. It's right. Murphy, you're pregnant. Sit down, we don't mind. The fans talked at the same time. Suddenly, the distance between them and Murphy seemed to be shortened a lot, and the atmosphere in the activity hall was particularly warm. This time, I will definitely sing for everyone, but because my energy is limited now, I can only sing a few songs. So, what song do you want me to sing? After Murphy sat down, she held a microphone and asked as usual. In my voice, the little girl who was still underage said, Listen to the sea. I came across the sea to see you. First dream. Their faces were filled with excitement as they gave out the names of their favorite songs. The songs that everyone wants to listen to are different? How about this? Let's do a simple lottery. I will pick one person each time, and then he will choose the song, and I will sing. There will be a total of 3 people. Okay? Murphy had to follow the process discussed before and asked Xiao AI to take out the lottery bucket. The fans didn't have any objections. Murphy had already given them a lot of respect by doing this, and they were very satisfied. Jia Siyuan. Murphy took out a note and read the name of the fan. The one who stood up was the office girl who dressed very maturely, but she was not reserved. Instead, like a little girl, she happily waved her hand and stood up. You are Jia Siyuan? Murphy was a little surprised. Ihi. Is my name a bit like a man's name? It can't be helped. Who asked my parents to give me such a name? Jia Siyuan's words made everyone laugh, but she was not reserved. Instead, she said generously, Murphy, I'm really your hardcore fan. When I was in high school, I liked listening to your songs very much. Thank you. Murphy responded gratefully. So the song I want to choose is a long time ago. It's your famous song Strangers. Speaking of this, Jia Siyuan said excitedly, It's true, I've been to your concert in Yangqing this year, but you didn't sing this song. Although this song has been in the past for a long time, I think it's very nice. I hope to hear you sing it again. Murphy was a little surprised. She didn't expect that someone would still order her old song. This made Murphy move to tears. She gently wiped the corner of her eyes, nodded, and said, "No problem. In fact, I sometimes practice this song because Yang Yi likes this song of mine very much." With that, Murphy turned to look at Yang Yi. Yang Yi smiled slightly. He didn't say anything. He just looked at Murphy. Then his fingers gently swept the guitar strings. Ding ding dong dong, the melody sounded. It was the prelude to Strangers. Jia Siyuan immediately recognized it. She couldn't help but be excited. "Oh," she said in a small voice. How affectionate were these two. Yang Yi can even memorize the score of Murphy's song from 6 years ago. Chapter 573. You said that this road is a little dark, but you don't want to accompany me. The so-called care is only left with indifference. I can only bear the sadness alone. Murphy's voice was intoxicating, and the emotions contained in the voice showed a sentimental strength. It made people like it, but at the same time, they couldn't help but have a trace of compassion. Even though they all knew that this was just a song. There were a few young fans, especially the little girl who just said that she wanted to hear In My Voice. Although she had heard Murphy's famous song before, that was only the old voice on the record. At this moment, when she listened to Murphy live, she suddenly realized that this song was also very good. In terms of emotional expression, it was no worse than Coming Across the Sea to See You. After all, this song also supported Murphy. At that time, the album Same Love as the Ink Road sold platinum and made Murphy famous. How could it be bad? After 6 years of accumulation, Murphy's singing skills had improved a lot, so when she sang live, it was naturally better than the old voice on the record. After the song, the fans still wanted to hear more. Murphy only opened her voice, but it was not enough. Let's continue to draw the fans who choose the song. Xiao Ai smiled and walked up with the lottery box. The newly selected fans chose Listen to the Sea, but it was not difficult to understand. This song was definitely Murphy's representative work. The other songs were also very good, but they could not bring out Murphy's singing skills to the fullest like Listen to the Sea. Without further ado, Yang Yi began to accompany Murphy. This song should have been accompanied by a piano, but Yang Yi performed a guitar version of Listen to the Sea for everyone today. Murphy may have been excited to sing, but she began to sing Listen to the Sea in a different style. Compared to the sadness that was blown away by the sea breeze before, this time she sang slightly deeper. Note 1. Accompanying your sea every night. How do I feel? Her tone was still raised, but she did not sing all the way to the end like before. Instead, she paused and continued rhythmically, and a sense of vicissitudes arose spontaneously. Sitting in front of Murphy, the distance was almost unprecedented. The fans were infected by Murphy's singing without any noise. The big boy who had ordered the song closed his eyes to listen to it. For some reason, when he closed his eyes, another scene appeared in his mind. It was as if this kind of song should be sung by Mo Fei in the old theater in the old days in a small suit. In a trance, he actually flipped through time and space. Of course, this was just the big boy's imagination. The others did not think so much. They thought it sounded good and found it interesting, so they shook their heads and swayed their bodies gently, with a happy smile on their faces. After a long time, Mo Fei also finished singing the third song. Although she just got excited, for the sake of her body, she stopped singing first. The staff at the back hurriedly brought up drinks and fruits, so that every fan could eat in their own seats. Not much. It was just that when they chatted later, they could eat happily and chat at the same time. Yang Yi also put down his guitar, poured Murphy a cup of orange juice she liked to drink, and then made a large pot of coffee at the coffee machine next to him. Who wants to drink coffee? Yang Yi smiled gently, raised the coffee pot and asked. I want it. Me too. Give me one too. The response was very enthusiastic. It was as if when they visited the studio and sang, Murphy and Yang Yi's interaction with them was more easygoing, making them let go of their reservations. Yang Yi naturally satisfied them. He carried the coffee pot and went down to pour them coffee. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. The underage star-chasing girl who raised her hand high saw that there was still a lot of drink in her cup and hurriedly wanted to drink it in big gulps. Don't try to be brave. It's not like we don't have a cup. Yang Yi hurriedly stopped her and asked the staff to bring a new disposable paper cup. He poured her coffee and said, "Drink slowly." Everyone talked happily and walked for a while. Xiao Ai came up to maintain order. She said, "Next, it's time to tell your story. In the previous investigation, we learned that many fans have a lot to say to Murphy, or their own stories, or their own wishes or questions. Then we must seize this opportunity. When a friend is talking, I hope everyone can keep relatively quiet and create a good environment for him to talk. Listen to his heart, or listen to what he wants to ask Murphy." Although there were only 30 fans, which was less than half a class in some schools, perhaps because they let down their guard, everyone's participation was very high. For example, the uncle, who looked very old, was the first to raise his hand and became the first person to tell a story. Actually, I'm not old really, I just look old, but I'm only 27 years old. Murphy just called me big brother, and I felt embarrassed." The uncle was called Mao Jia, and his voice was clear. "Sorry, I misunderstood." Murphy apologized to the other party with a smile in the midst of everyone's laughter. "It's okay, I'm used to it." Mao Jia seemed more reserved in everyone's laughter. He scratched his head and said, "In fact, I'm not the same as many of my peers. Maybe it's because everyone thinks I'm old, but I don't know why my mentality has become old. Everyone likes to listen to pop songs like Listen to the Sea and Love Me Don't Go, but I prefer to listen to 15th Moon and other military songs. Really, I also like to listen to other songs, but since your military song album came out, I don't want to listen to other songs. I'll listen to these 4 songs on an infinite loop." Mao Jia was worried that Murphy and other people wouldn't believe him, so he quickly turned around and said to everyone, "I believe you, I also like 15th Moon very much. In fact, for me, the type of song isn't very important. Before Yang Yi wrote these songs, I didn't know that I could sing military songs, but it's really good. And it feels very good to sing, as if I've stepped into a new field that I've never explored before. I'm very happy." Murphy also told him her feelings. "I've actually always wanted to hear you or teacher Yang Yi sing a military song, but I wasn't chosen just now." Mao Jia scratched his head regretfully. "It doesn't matter, in a while, when we're done talking, I'll sing a few more songs for everyone. Among them, there's 15th Moon. How about this, I'll sing a part, and you sing a part?" Murphy said with a smile. "I don't sing well, I'll sing out of tune." Mao Jia said embarrassedly, "Why don't you sing, Murphy? The star-chasing girl just now was very lively." She suggested, "Murphy can sing a part, and teacher Muzi, On can sing a part. I really like to see the two of you working together." Murphy froze for a moment, but the fans below the stage all agreed with this suggestion. They all laughed and applauded. "Can I?" Murphy looked at Yang Yi. Sitting on the side, Yang Yi, who tried to reduce his presence as much as possible, coolly made an okay gesture. After a while, it was finally Jia Siyuan's turn. She couldn't hold it in any longer. When she was called, she immediately stood up and said, "Murphy, I have a story I want to share with you." Chapter 574. In fact, Jia Siyuan was just dressed up maturely. She was not old, had a cheerful personality, and spoke naturally and generously, which left a very good impression on everyone. "Tell me." Murphy looked at Jia Siyuan curiously, wanting to know what her story was. "The story I want to tell you is the most important piece of fate in my life, the most beautiful encounter." Jia Siyuan did not shy, but clasped her hands together in front of her chest and said with some emotion, "Wow." Several fans couldn't help but exclaim. Mao Jia was the same. He grinned and looked very gossipy. "Murphy, do you know? It all started at the beginning of the year when your album First Dream was released." Jia Siyuan did not care about everyone's laughter with a teasing tone, and continued, "It's also related to my album?" Murphy said in surprise. "Of course, because I have been your loyal fan since high school, before you retired. As soon as your new album came out, I couldn't wait to leave the company. I even worked overtime on New Year's Day, so I skipped work and went to the video store to buy your album with others. I was afraid that if I was late, I wouldn't be able to buy it in the first batch. Jia Siyuan seemed to be lost in her memories. The story was not complicated, very much like a fairy tale. Two people who liked Murphy's music met in the video store. When they saw each other, they felt that each other's temperament, dress, and appearance were good, but they didn't have any feelings for each other, so they didn't think of exchanging contact information or developing further. It's very interesting. He was courteous to me and let me take it first. This is actually a very gentlemanly performance, but at that time, he also chatted with me. Although I didn't show it, I was muttering in my heart. Was this person deliberately hitting on me? This trick is too old. Jia Siyuan didn't feel ashamed at all and said it openly. The others listened with great interest. Later, I asked him and found out that it wasn't. He just felt a little embarrassed after touching my hand. So he casually found a sentence to ease the awkwardness. Jia Siyuan held her forehead with her hand and smiled helplessly. Everyone laughed. They could imagine how embarrassed Jia Siyuan was when he knew the truth at that time. It was as if the heavens had reincarnation. And then, did you guys get to know each other because of this? Murphy was very happy to eat the melon and took the initiative to ask. No, I didn't leave after I bought your album. Jia Siyuan was definitely not a qualified storyteller. She rambled on for a long time, talking about how she argued with others over Murphy's album and how Murphy's songs were good. Then she circled back to the man who bribed the store manager to let him play Murphy's album. When I saw that scene, I suddenly felt that this guy was quite interesting. His style of doing things deeply attracted me. And really, after he asked the store manager to play your song, many customers who didn't know about it couldn't help but go to the front desk to ask whose song it was. It's so good, Jia Siyuan said happily. After digressing for a while, Jia Siyuan finally got to the part where she boldly stopped the man who was about to leave and asked for his phone number. Whoa. It was very rare for a woman to chase a man. Including Yang Yi and Murphy, everyone couldn't help but cheer for Jia Siyuan's decisiveness and for this fate. Then now, are you still together? Murphy asked cautiously. She was a little worried that she would make a mistake. Jia Siyuan's face was full of spring breeze. She happily stretched out her left hand, showed her wedding ring and said, he has now leveled up. It's also because of the positive influence of Murphy and Yang Yi's marriage and pregnancy. We feel that since we get along so well and our personalities make each other feel comfortable, why not bravely hope for a permanent relationship? It was a bit fast, but almost 10 months had passed. The blossoming of love also made people feel warm after listening to it. They couldn't help but be infected by Jia Siyuan's happiness. Actually, I also didn't think that I had the chance to become one of the 30 lucky fans. So in the beginning, my husband and I also tried to forward it. I also told him that no matter which one of us got it, we must go and tell Mo Fei our story. This fate was given to us by Mo Fei. Jia Siyuan looked at Mo Fei and said. He also told me that it didn't matter. Even if I was selected, I would let you go. In the end, unfortunately, I was selected and he didn't have the chance to show me his chivalry. Jia Siyuan still laughed casually, as if in their life, everything was interesting, optimistic, and worth looking forward to. Murphy was moved by Jia Siyuan's story. Her eyes were a little moist, but when she heard the last part, she couldn't help but laugh. When Jia Siyuan finished, she stood up and walked down. She gently hugged Jia Siyuan and said with a smile, "Thank you, but I still want to say that fate is your own. My song was just a coincidence. But no matter what, I'm very happy. I'm happy for you, and I'm happy for myself to be able to witness your love." Jia Siyuan's story was obviously the most beautiful story in this fan meeting. It was like a fairy tale that infected everyone. However, not everyone would have such a coincidental encounter. Like a star-chasing girl, when it was her turn, she didn't have any story. She just had a stomach full of words that she wanted to tell Murphy. She told Murphy how she liked Murphy's song. Her friends also liked it very much. There was even an antique boy who usually didn't like to listen to music who liked Murphy's happy and unfettered lament. Thank you for your support, but you're still students. Usually you're nervous about your studies. You spend your parents' money to chase stars, so I still hope that you can chase stars rationally. Under the power of stars and idols, you have to study hard and become the outstanding talent you want to be. Murphy didn't know if it was because of her pregnancy, but her maternal instincts were activated. She was still very concerned about this girl. She wasn't like this in the past. In the past, Murphy preferred to look at the world with cold eyes. If you did something that she didn't like, she wouldn't look at it and wouldn't say anything. Yang Yi was drinking coffee on the side. Listening to Murphy's caring words, he didn't feel that she was like a different person. Because Murphy usually didn't talk much, Yang Yi liked Murphy's quietness and simplicity, but he didn't really could only say that he didn't dislike, Murphy's indifference. She could care about others, which was also an act of being considerate. The star-chasing girl nodded excitedly and said, "Thank you, Sister Murphy. Actually, my grades are pretty good. I can often be ranked in the top 10 of my class. Our teacher said that it wouldn't be a problem for me to get into a better university." Before Murphy could feel happy for her, the star-chasing girl clenched her fists and looked at Murphy expectantly. She said, "I will definitely study hard and work hard to get good grades in the future college entrance examination. But Sister Murphy, you have to work hard too. Do you know that we fans are all anxious for you?" Ah. Murphy looked at her in confusion, not knowing what she was referring to. The star-chasing girl counted with her fingers, and rambled on about how Murphy was said by some media to be the queen with the weakest starlight, and the most unstable divinity. "Sister Murphy, you have 2 platinum albums. They dare to say that about you. Then they say that Sister Murphy doesn't take the entertainment industry seriously. You retire whenever you want. Once you get pregnant, you disappear from the media. Even an A-list singer can't reach this level of popularity. No queen would be so lazy," the star-chasing girl said indignantly, but this anger was mixed with uneasiness. "My classmates and I are very angry. Also, I join many of my fan groups. Everyone is worried that Sister Murphy will disappear for a few years again and make everyone wait in vain. Don't worry. It's different from last time. I'll be back soon. And even if we don't appear in front of the media often, accept interviews, shoot commercials, and rush for announcements, we'll still sing for everyone." Murphy comforted this little girl and said, "Just like in October, we'll release a new song again." "Really?" Not only the star-chasing girl, but everyone else also asked with a look of surprise. "Really, but actually it can't be said to be a new song. For example, 'Today You Will Marry Me,' that everyone was very enthusiastic about, and Yang Yi's 'Want to Sing Me to You,' and so on. These songs have actually been recorded, and will be released to everyone in the form of singles one after another," Murphy said. "I'll buy it. Really, I'll buy every song." The star-chasing girl looked at Murphy, then looked at Yang Yi and said excitedly while waving her fist. Not only her, but everyone present were hardcore fans. Although there was no doubt that they would all buy Murphy's songs, they still couldn't help but express their opinions with her. "I have one last small wish to tell you, Murphy." After everyone finished laughing and joking, the star-chasing girl was still reluctant to sit down. She raised a finger and looked at Murphy pitifully. "It's okay. Today's time is more casual. You can say it." Murphy smiled at the other party. This fan meeting was only left with Murphy and Yang Yi singing a few songs. However, Murphy's state was still relatively good. She swept away her usual melancholy at home, and her face was full of radiance. It seemed that she also enjoyed the feeling of interacting with fans. "That's right. Although I know that it's not convenient for you now, Sister Murphy, I still hope that after you give birth to the baby and come back, you can do it. Let those media who look down on you see how amazing you are." The star-chasing girl said excitedly, "Sister Murphy, in my heart, you are the best female singer in all of China, and even the world. Okay, after I come back, I will work hard and become the best female singer. I won't let you down." Murphy was infected by the other party's emotions. She clenched her fists and said seriously to the other party, "You have to work hard, study hard, and get into a good university." These words were a bit thoughtless. If it was spread out, she would definitely be caught by the media. Therefore, when the fan meeting was over, Mo Xiaowan and Xiao AI hurriedly communicated with the 30 fans and asked them not to reveal Murphy's unintentional words of become the best female singer. However, no one could be sure that no one would say it out loud. After Mo Xiaowan came back, she complained to Murphy, "Sister, how can you say something like that? What if others use this as an excuse and say that you're overestimating yourself, and that you're arrogant just because you got some results?" Murphy frowned and said, "I only said that to encourage this child and let her study hard. But the media won't listen to your explanation. They'll only take it out of context." Mo Xiaowan scratched her head and said worriedly. Yang Yi had been listening by the side. He finally couldn't help but come over and put his arm around Murphy's shoulder. He smiled and said, "Okay, Murphy, you didn't do it on purpose. Don't take it to heart. Also, if the media exposed it, then let it be exposed. Who said that our Murphy isn't the best female singer? Let me tell you, not just in China, but in the world. Are you comforting me?" Murphy couldn't help but laugh. Yang Yi shrugged and looked at her with a smile. Mo Xiaowan rolled her eyes and helplessly covered her forehead. She thought that Yang Yi was teasing Murphy, but she didn't know that Yang Yi was serious. He suddenly thought of something from the girl and Mo Xiaojuan's conversation. Why couldn't Murphy become the best female singer? In other words, why couldn't Murphy become a world-class superstar like Beyoncé? She could speak English too. Growing up in America, Murphy's English was about the same as the Americans. Most importantly, Murphy's singing was no worse than Beyoncé's. The so-called unstable divinity was just because she was too low-key and didn't compete. But it didn't matter. He had a huge amount of resources and all kinds of wonderful ideas from his previous life that could support her divinity. Let Murphy become China's queen first, then a world-class superstar. Yang Yi seemed to have found a very interesting game. Of course, it would be very difficult to complete the game. After all, on the one hand, she didn't need to be as busy as when she was in the management company. She didn't need to rush for work. She only needed to record songs, go on some of her favorite variety shows, and sing for her fans on stage to ensure that she had enough time to spend with her family. On the other hand, she wanted to achieve a work-life balance and become a superstar at the same time. In other people's eyes, it might be a fool's dream. However, Yang Yi felt that it wasn't impossible. When he patted Murphy's shoulder to comfort her, many interesting ideas flashed through his mind. Moreover, he didn't need to put too much effort into these ideas. He only needed to come up with ideas. Didn't Mo Xiaowan always complain that Yang Yi and Murphy didn't have a schedule together? She had nothing to do, and was bored out of her mind. Let her arrange all of this. When Murphy came back, these preparations could be said to be paving the way for her to become a true superstar. Chapter 575. After Mo Fei's fan meeting ended, although it was still the end of September, on Monday, Springfield Kindergarten started its new school term. The happiest person was, of course, Shishi. During this summer vacation, other than Lon Xian, who often played with her as a neighbor, she rarely saw her other friends. Therefore, when Yang Yi sent Shishi to the door of the new classroom, the little girl kissed her father on the cheek and couldn't wait to wave at him. "Goodbye, Papa." Hearing the joy in her voice, Yang Yi couldn't help but feel a little jealous. This little girl wanted to play with her friends of the same age, but she didn't stick to her father every day and yearn for his embrace like before. But this was all growing up. Like other worried parents, Yang Yi looked in through the window. He saw Shishi in the classroom, surrounded by a group of friends. The little girl's happy smile was like a ripple, rippling in circles. Yang Yi watched for a while, then turned around and prepared to leave. He was also preparing to report to Jiangchuan today. He didn't need to register. He just needed to find the vice president of the School of Classical Music, Peng Buodong, whom Hu Songnen had helped him contact, and listen to his arrangements. However, when Yang Yi turned around, he saw David and his daughter Lu Weisha. "Leon." David greeted him cheerfully. Previously, he couldn't distinguish the Yang from Yang Yi, so Yang Yi simply gave him his English name. This tall foreign little girl was still a little shy. When she first saw Yang Yi, she was actually very happy because Yang Yi could speak her language. although only a little. However, when she saw Yang Yi looking over, she restrained her joy. However, it had to be said that there was still a gap between the standards of raising a child and the father's. Lu Weisha was wearing a pair of purplish-red pants and a short-sleeved shirt with flower petals printed on it. This combination could be said to be very ordinary. Unlike Chinese parents, David was not worried about whether their children could integrate into the new environment. After he brought Lu Weisha to Mr. Mu, he left with Yang Yi. "Leon, I forgot to ask. What do you do for a living?" David and Yang Yi were communicating in English, but he was curious as to why Yang Yi could speak Swedish, which was a relatively unpopular language, so he asked. This was a good question. Yang Yi was stunned for a moment and didn't know how to answer. The things he did were too complicated. You could say that he was a writer or a singer, but he also had other identities. It was all over the place. How should she put it? Yang Yi pondered for a moment and simply chose his favorite character. He smiled and said, "I opened a coffee shop." "Coffee shop? I didn't expect you to like coffee too," David said in surprise. "Sorry, I'm not discriminating. It's just that when I talk about China, I think of tea just like when I talk about England." As if they had a common language, Yang Yi and David chatted. After the two fathers left, Mr. Mu brought Lu Weisha into the classroom. The children were still chatting with their favorite children. Except for a few children near the door who curiously looked at Lu Weisha, who looked different from them, the rest of the children's attention was not affected at all. "Lu Weisha, sit here for a while. After class, I will introduce you to the other children, okay?" Mr. Mu asked Lu Weisha to sit down on a chair, and then said with a smile. Lu Weisha's English wasn't as good as her father's. After all, she hadn't studied English systematically before she went to school, so she didn't really understand. However, the general meaning wasn't hard to understand, so she nodded in confusion. Mr. Mu still had to welcome the other children. She helped Lu Weisha put her school bag and lunchbox in her cupboard. Then, she asked Mr. Shen in the class to take care of this child who did not speak well. She then walked out. Lu Weisha sat on the chair with one hand on the table, and the other hand clutching her clothes uneasily. She looked at the other children enviously, but she did not understand what they were saying at all. She always felt isolated. It was just like Shishi when she first came to kindergarten a year ago. At this time, someone in Shishi's small group finally noticed Lu Weisha. "Foreigner, there's a foreigner there." Lan Xian, who liked to look around, shouted as if she had discovered a new world. However, she seemed to be worried that she would be heard, so she lowered her voice in embarrassment. Lan Xian often went abroad with her parents. She was not as scared of the blonde Lu Weisha as she was at the beginning. She even felt that she was normal. After a few glances, she looked away. "Foreigner? What foreigner?" Chen Shiyan, who liked to join in the fun, was a little hoarse today. However, she still desperately asked loudly to make her presence felt. Shishi and her friends followed Lan Xian's finger, and saw Lu Weisha, who was sitting there uneasily. The little girl's eyes lit up. She walked out from among her friends and called out in a clear voice, "Lu Weisha." Lu Weisha was stunned for a moment. She turned to look at the person who called her. When she saw Shishi, Lu Weisha thought for a while. After all, foreigners looked the same to Chinese people. Lu Weisha. Shishi did not forget the Swedish sentence that her father taught her last week. Therefore, she ran to Lu Weisha and happily greeted Lu Weisha. Lu Weisha quickly stood up and waved her right hand. She replied to Shishi, God_Morgan Cici. She was saying good morning to Shishi, but Shishi was confused. What was this little friend saying? Why couldn't she understand? Cici understood, but what about the first sentence? Hey, what did you say? I don't understand. Cici smiled awkwardly. She stuck out her tongue and switched back to Mandarin to speak to the other party. Lu Weisha was also in a daze. She and Cici just stood there, looking at each other. Shishi's friends followed behind them. She's so tall. Nan Zhaoyu, who had not started to grow, looked at the tall Lu Weisha enviously. He whispered to Yang Luoqi, who was beside him. Shishi and I have seen her before. Yang Luoqi still felt a little distant from Lu Weisha, but she also had a lot to say, so she couldn't help but tell Nan Zhaoyu. She's a foreigner. It's super strange. She also said that foreigners have other colors, such as black and red. Nan Zhaoyu looked at Yang Luoqi in surprise. It seemed that Yang Luoqi's words had made him realize something magical. These two were more timid, but Chen Shiyin was very brave. She swaggered up and stood beside Lu Weisha. She stretched out her hand and said in a hoarse voice, She said that you are her friend, and I am also Shishi's good friend. So we are friends too. My name is Chen Shiyin. Chen Shiyin paused for a moment before adding the last sentence. She had forgotten to say her name at first. Lu Weisha looked at Chen Shiyin in confusion. She didn't understand what Chen Shiyin was saying at all. However, Lu Weisha could still feel the kindness in Chen Shiyin's hand. Maybe she's introducing herself. Lu Weisha still wanted to integrate into this environment, so she hesitated for a moment before shaking Chen Shiyin's hand. Yes, the communication between the two children was like a chicken talking to a duck, but they still shook hands like friends. She looked at the grinning Chen Shiyin and felt happy for her. The little girl giggled and helped to introduce. She's Lu Weisha. Chen Shiyin, I'll teach you how to talk to her, okay? Tell her Hedge. Lu Weisha. Chen Shiyin was a little carried away. She waved her hands and shouted, Hey Lu Weisha. No, it's Hedge. She corrected. But it didn't matter. When Lu Weisha heard Chen Shiyin call her name, she smiled happily. She quickly nodded and said in English with a very strange pronunciation, What's your name? She knew a little English. She understood this sentence. She said to Chen Shiyin enthusiastically, Chen Shiyin, she's asking for your name. My name is Chen Shiyin. Chen Shiyin patted her chest and said, Name. She was afraid that Lu Weisha couldn't understand, so she pointed at Chen Shiyin and said, Chen Shiyin. Cheng Yueshi? Lu Weisha repeated, but her pronunciation was completely wrong. It's Chen Shiyin, not the one you're talking about. Chen Shiyin shouted and laughed. Shi and Chen Shiyin were still helping Lu Weisha to understand Chen Shiyin's name. Lan Xian, who was next to them, was also eager to try. She wanted Lu Weisha to know her. And this lively scene still moved the two timid children, Yang Luoqi and Nan Zhaoyu. When they saw that Lu Weisha didn't seem to be afraid, they also wanted to talk to her. When Teacher Mu came back, she saw a few children surrounding Lu Weisha and talking. They were waving their hands and feet. They didn't know what each other was saying, but they seemed to be very happy. This scene made Teacher Mu dumbfounded. What's going on? She was worried that Lu Weisha wouldn't be able to blend in with the other children because of the language barrier. There were foreign children in other classes, but it was easier to communicate with those who spoke English. After all, the kindergarten also taught the children some simple English words and conversations. But Lu Weisha spoke Swedish, which no one understood. Of course, Teacher Mu didn't know that because of Shi, Lu Weisha wasn't ostracized and could be accepted by the other Chinese children so quickly. You're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.